Hi guys, welcome to Midnight Anime Library. I summoned the 8 demons and the world government panicked. One Piece Part 4 Chapter 61, Interrogation from the Marines Top Brass. The Marine soldier guards outside the Fleet Admiral's office were startled by the sudden sound. They had been on guard duty for so long. They had never seen Fleet Admiral Sengoku so agitated before. What major event could have happened? Inside the office, Sengoku held the Den Mushi with an excited expression, listening to the report from the other side, feeling somewhat unreal. Roxio, who had been out of contact for so many days, was now, upon hearing his name again, successfully arrested. Could there be anything more exhilarating than this? After a long while, he composed himself and continued to speak. Good, very good. Has the person already been escorted to Marineford? Yes, Fleet Admiral. They are on their way. Sengoku immediately felt a sense of relief and hung up the phone. His face showed an uncontrollable joy. Just moments ago, he was in a frenzy over Roxio's matter. Who would have thought? The next moment, good news would arrive. Indeed, my guess was correct. Although Roxio's strength is formidable, it is far from reaching the level of 2 admirals. Half a day later, good-faced Luashio returned to Marineford under the escort of Admirals Akainu and Kizaru. At this moment, Roxio walked at the very front, with Akainu and Kizaru on either side. Behind them followed numerous Marine soldiers dispatched from Marineford. Standing on both sides were even more Marines stationed at Marineford. They watched the scene before them, discussing in hushed tones. Is that Roxio? The strongest Marine rookie who warranted 2 admirals being dispatched. What good is being the strongest rookie if he still got arrested? It seems, his demeanor is a bit different from what the rumors said. Yeah. A bit strange, but it doesn't matter, he's arrested anyway. But he's already arrested. Do the Fleet Admiral and the others still need to be so cautious? Everyone has been mobilized. I've been at Marineford for so many years, and I've never seen a pirate worthy of Fleet Admiral Sengoku personally coming out to greet them. Not to mention Vice Admiral Garp and the others. The Marine soldiers' understanding of Roxio was limited to his bounty and newspaper articles. As for the so-called forces behind Roxio, they knew nothing. At this moment, their gaze fell upon the high platform. The few people standing there represented the Marines' highest combat power. Vice Admiral Garp, Tsuru, and the 3rd Admiral, Akiji, as well as Fleet Admiral Sengoku. The Marine soldiers' faces all showed expressions of extreme surprise. Not only because Roxio was captured, but also because Fleet Admiral Sengoku and the others had all been mobilized. Although they had been at Marineford for many years, it was usually difficult to even catch a glimpse of an admiral. But this time, Sengoku, the 3 admirals, the hero of the Marines, Vice Admiral Tsuru, every name, when mentioned in the New World, was enough to make pirates tremble. Yet, they were all gathered here, appearing in the same scene. Even more absurd, it wasn't for someone from the world government, but for a pirate. A pirate who had already been arrested. Although this pirate was very strong, with a strength that subtly approached that of the 4 emperors. But now that he was caught, was it really necessary to make such a big fuss? They suddenly felt that Roxio's threat seemed much more serious than they had imagined. On the high platform, Sengoku looked down at Roxio below. He slowly let out a breath. The last stone in his heart finally fell. There were no mistakes, no unexpected events. Roxio was truly arrested. At this time, the expressions of the other few people were also much more relaxed compared to the last meeting. Ha 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 ha. Sengoku. I thought you were playing a trick on me. I didn't expect you actually caught him. Garp looked at Roxio, who was handcuffed below, and laughed loudly. When he first heard the news, his first reaction was to doubt the authenticity of the news. However, facts showed his worries were unnecessary. Do you think I'm as frivolous as you are? Sengoku rolled his eyes and said grumpily. But the excitement on his face hadn't diminished in the slightest. It's good that he's caught. But Sengoku, you called us here, not just to watch the scene, right? Vice Admiral Tsuru said. Of course not. Sengoku smiled and said, first, take Roxyu for interrogation, Marineford, in the conference room. Roxyu was seated, and opposite him sat a row of influential figures. In the very center was naturally Fleet Admiral Sengoku, with Garp on Sengoku's right and Vice Admiral Tsuru on his left. These three elders, who had made their names since the Rocks era, were the main persons in charge of this interrogation. The three admirals sat to their left. Besides them, there was also a middle-aged man in the conference room. He was specifically called by Sengoku. He was a professional lie detection master named Madeline. He had interrogated numerous prisoners in Impel Down and possessed exceptionally rich experience. He could tell at a glance whether an interrogated subject was lying. His purpose here was to test the truthfulness of Roxyu's words. Roxyu, your first appearance was in the East Blue. You once opened a medical clinic, and people called you the Blood Hand Butcher. Is that right? Sengoku broke the silence and asked directly. Good-faced Luashio's face drooped. He was arrested because he didn't want to harm others. It's truly difficult to be a good person in this world. Hearing Sengoku's question, he nodded, yes. In his worldview, lying was considered a sin, something only bad people would do. For example, the other Roxyu who was heading to Sabaody Archipelago. Sengoku frowned. What's going on? He hadn't expected Roxyu to be so cooperative. He had thought the other party would try to fool around, remain silent throughout, or speak nonsense. After all, in his perception, pirates were all very cunning. It seems Roxyu has accepted his fate and understood his current situation. He's quite open-minded. Sengoku thought to himself. After that, you brutally murdered Marine Branch Colonel Nazumi, and then severely injured Smoker, Sengoku continued, listing Roxyu's crimes one by one. Roxyu indicated with silence that everything he said was correct. Sengoku sneered. This Roxyu, despite his benevolent appearance, offered no defense for the crimes he committed. But these were not the most important, the crucial questions were next. These were the key to his interrogation of Roxyu. Roxyu, tell us about the devil. Where are the other devils now? Are they hidden in the East Blue? Chapter 62, Public Execution. Capturing Roxyu was naturally a great victory for the Marines. But this was only the first step. Because he knew very well that capturing one Roxyu would not resolve the enormous threat the Marines currently faced. There were still 7 others whose strength was comparable to Roxyu's. The Marines still knew nothing about these devils. Without a doubt. Roxyu. He was the first leverage point for obtaining information. They had to seize this opportunity, so that corresponding plans could be arranged afterward. He's not in the East Blue. Roxyu looked glum. He's inside my body. As soon as he said this, everyone present looked utterly bewildered. Sengoku was even more astonished. What the hell? Inside your body? His mouth twitched violently, feeling that his intelligence had been greatly insulted. Did this Roxyu think he was a 3-year-old child? If he was going to lie, he should at least find a decent excuse. Roxyu, recognize your current situation. You are one of the devils. Do you think we would believe such a thing? Sengoku's face darkened. Believe it or not. Roxyu looked completely unconcerned. He knew the other side wouldn't believe him, so it made no difference whether he spoke or not. Saying it was just to save trouble. Seeing Roxyu's demeanor, Sengoku was almost laughed into anger. Believe it or not? Anyone can see through a lie like that. Then, he looked toward Madeline, who had come from Impel Down. The meaning was self-evident. The middle-aged man's eyes twitched slightly, and he swallowed hard. Of course, he knew what Fleet Admiral Sengoku meant by looking at him. It was to confirm whether what Roxyu said was true. But the signs he was observing indicated that although this person's words were outrageous, he didn't seem to be lying. Fleet Admiral. It seems, it's the truth. Medellin said with difficulty. Ha? Sengoku was stunned. He thought he had misheard, but when he saw the expressions of the others, which were similar to his own, he knew he hadn't misheard. Garp couldn't help but scratch his somewhat messy hair. Are you sure? Those words sound like complete nonsense. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's forehead broke out in sweat. Facing these top marine combatants, he felt immense pressure. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. His professional expertise told him that Roxiu was indeed not lying. But, as Garp said, anyone could tell that the statement was false. How could another person be hidden inside a perfectly healthy individual? It was completely illogical. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. On one side were the various marine big shots, and on the other was his professional integrity. What exactly should he say? Damn it! He suddenly regretted coming here. He had interrogated hundreds of thousands of prisoners inside Impel Down, yet he had never encountered a guy like this. The words clearly sounded false, yet they seemed to be true. After a period of inner conflict, a flicker of determination flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes, and he chose to trust his decades of professional integrity. I am certain. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire room fell silent again. Kizaru couldn't help but frown. Oh my, this is truly interesting. For some reason, that indescribable feeling in his heart rose up once more. Even though they had captured Roxiu, he felt as if this guy was still shrouded in a layer of mist. He actually thought Roxiu's words might be true. Kizaru thought this, but others did not feel the same way. Especially Akainu, who had personally arrested Roxiu. He snorted coldly, finding it utterly ridiculous. What a joke! Do words like that even require assessment? Tapping his finger on the table, he looked at Sengoku and said, Fleet Admiral, let's move on to a different question. Sengoku also didn't believe him. But he knew Medellin's capability. He had been called the human lie detector by Magellan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been asked to come personally. For a moment, Sengoku felt like his head was splitting. This guy, Roxiu, had caused him severe headaches when he was free. Now that he was captured and undergoing interrogation, he was somehow causing headaches again. Truly a detestable fellow. Then what are you plotting in secret? Or rather, as one of the devils? Is your ultimate goal to threaten Marineford, or even the world government? What is the specific timing of the plan? Sengoku continued to ask, following up on Akainu's point. When this question was asked, the three admirals, Garp, and the others couldn't help but straighten their posture. Their expressions were solemn as they waited for Roxiu's answer. Threatening Marineford, the world government, the specific plan. Without a doubt, every one of these phrases carried immense weight. And precisely because of this weight, they treated this question with such importance. Roxiu was honest as always. He smiled and said, There is no plan. I just want to find a place where I can work from sunrise to sunset and spend the rest of my life. This was his honest truth. Good-faced Luashio felt extremely unsuited to the life of fighting and killing in the pirate world. Compared to searching for devil fruits or enhancing his strength, he would rather live out the rest of his days in peace and quiet. This was what he truly sought. Sengoku was slightly stunned, not expecting Roxiu to actually answer. But what he said nearly made Sengoku spit out a mouthful of old blood. His beard trembled violently with anger. Bang! He slammed the table fiercely. You bastard! He was now absolutely certain that Roxiu had been talking nonsense earlier. A person who emerged from the East Blue, fought and killed all the way, and even defeated Kizaru. Now claiming he just wants to be a salted fish, a slacker. A person who yearns for a peaceful life. Was there anything more absurd than this? Then, he subconsciously glanced at Medellin, who was sweating profusely, swallowed, and stammered, It is the truth. Sengoku's eye twitched violently. Roxiu was too cunning, every sentence sounded absolutely certain. But he knew they were all lies. Most importantly, Medellin couldn't detect any flaws in these lies. Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Continuing to question him like this seems pointless. Vice Admiral Tsuru, who had remained silent, spoke up at this moment. Clearly, using this method to interrogate Roxiu was useless, they couldn't extract any effective information. She didn't quite understand why Sengoku the strategist would choose such a method. Sengoku sighed and fell silent. In fact, he also understood this point. Mechanical interrogation methods were often very inefficient. But regarding information about the devils, Marineford had no other channels besides Roxiu. Since they had finally managed to arrest him, they had to try and pry out some useful information. However, the results so far were unsatisfactory. Roxiu was even more troublesome than they had imagined. Fortunately, there were other options. This was also the purpose of gathering everyone here. Take Roxiu away for now. Sengoku shook his head and sighed. Several marine soldiers entered and escorted Roxiu away. Since interrogation is useless, then we must skip this step and proceed to the next. We will announce Roxiu's capture to the entire world and hold a public execution. Chapter 63. Half a month later, the location is set for Marineford. Announce Roxiu's arrest to the whole world and conduct a public execution for the whole world to see. These were the two ideas that came to Sengoku the moment he learned of Roxiu's capture. As for why he chose to do this, the purpose was simple. From the Marines' perspective, ever since the former pirate King Roger was executed in Lode Town, ushering in the Great Pirate Era, over the years, new recruits have continuously joined the pirate ranks in various places. Whether it's the Four Seas or the Grand Line, the overall number of pirates is much higher compared to the Rocks era. And as the number of people joining pirates increases, it's undoubtedly true that the number of people the Marines can recruit naturally decreases. In other words, the overall strength of the Marines, compared to the ever-increasing number of pirates, has been slowly declining in influence. To this day, after decades, the sea is currently in a relatively balanced state. The Shichibukai, Marines, and pirates form a stable triangular relationship, at least on the surface. However, all of this was suddenly broken. Roxiu appeared. This person, as a newcomer pirate from the East Blue, defeated Admiral Kizaru. This caused the momentum of the long-dormant pirates to surge once again. Based on past experience, this would lead to another wave of people choosing to set sail and become pirates. This is extremely detrimental to the Marines. And now, Roxiu has been arrested. Naturally, this news must be announced to the world. The public execution is for deterrence. To tell the whole world that the authority of the Marines cannot be challenged by anyone. Being a pirate only leads to a dead end. Of course, besides this, there is another reason for the public execution, to draw out the forces behind Roxiu. Sengoku believes that as fellow devils, those people will surely not stand by and watch Roxiu be captured and executed. This is a good opportunity to lure the snake out of its hole. A public execution, huh? Akainu's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light upon hearing this. That's exactly what should be done, he murmured to himself. Clearly, in his opinion, this is what the Marines should do. It's just a pirate, there's no need for interrogation, just directly escort him to the execution platform. To tell others with swift and decisive action that Marine justice is not to be desecrated. Moreover, there's a chance to catch them all. Garp folded his arms across his chest, frowning at Sengoku's decision. The public execution method is indeed feasible. But it's also a huge gamble. What Sengoku thought of, he could also think of. However, public execution faces a problem. The overall strength of the devils behind Roxiu is still unknown, everything stems from their own conjectures. If they really come, how many troops the Marines need to deploy is crucial, because if they cannot catch all of them, the public execution will ultimately turn into a joke. The Marines will also become a laughingstock to the whole world. Therefore, it must be ensured that after those devils arrive, not a single one can escape. Only then will this execution be meaningful. But this is difficult. After all, Roxiu's current strength alone required 2 admirals to apprehend him. I don't think we need to worry too much. I personally verified Roxiu's strength. He's not as strong as imagined, Akaino said with certainty. He couldn't even last half an hour. To say that such a person possesses strength beyond an admiral is truly a bit far-fetched. He believed he could capture Roxiu by himself. There was no need to worry too much. As for why Kizaru lost to Roxiu, Akainu was actually a bit confused. Kizaru pouted, his eyes flickering, but he didn't say much, because it was indeed the truth. Roxiu's strength is not important, Sengoku said slowly. No matter what he's like, or what the strength of the devil army he represents is, the public execution must be carried out. Because we want to uproot them. This is the best way. With the interrogation failed, there was only this option left. Otherwise, doing nothing and letting those guys grow stronger. The future dangers might be even greater. And if we do nothing, constantly looking over our shoulders and choosing to retreat simply because we fear the forces behind Roxiu, then how can we speak of justice? Sengoku said heavily. His words resonated in the room, lingering for a long time. Garp and Kizaru's eyes gradually filled with resolute expressions. Indeed. What kind of place is the Marine? The highest position that upholds the banner of justice. What is there to worry about with one Roxiu and those devils? They survived the Battle of God Valley decades ago. Now that the overall strength of the Marines has increased, are they still going to fear an unseen organization? Fleet Admiral. Where will the execution take place? At this moment, Admiral Akiji, who had remained silent, asked with firm eyes. The public execution was already a certainty. But where would it be? Where would be most suitable? Right here at Marineford. Marineford, Sengoku said in a deep voice. Hiss as soon as these words came out. Akiji couldn't help but exhale a cold breath. The air in front of him instantly froze into ice shards. A public execution in Marineford. This was truly a bold decision. But he understood that it was indeed the best option at the moment. Marineford is not only the strongest gathering place for Marine combat power. It also has many defensive barriers, making troop deployment in Marineford the simplest and most effective. The other few people also trembled simultaneously upon hearing this. To protect the justice in the hearts of the world's people, we must not retreat, Akaino said with firm eyes. Garp frowned, his left eyelid twitching, always feeling that something bad was about to happen. Vice Admiral Tsuru nodded silently. Sengoku reached out and gently stroked the great cloak draped over his shoulders, symbolizing justice. He said solemnly, if it were some other fortress, it could be rebuilt if destroyed, but this island, Marineford, located at the center of the world, holds immense significance for the world's people who fear evildoers running rampant. It absolutely cannot be sunk. But Garp's worries are not unfounded. We must deploy defenses comprehensively and build Marineford into the strongest defensive line in the world. Then, when would be a suitable time? In half a month. Sengoku pondered for a while, finally setting the time. Within half a month, the Marines needed to deploy forces and transfer combat power from other sea areas to the headquarters. And also needed to give the world time for public opinion to ferment. During this time, first throw Roxiu into Impel Down. Imprison him on level 6. Chapter 64, Another Huge Scoop. The Celestial Dragons appear. The location of the World News Press. The President's office. Morgan sat in his office chair, a bottle of red wine resting on his desk. In his hand, he held a wineglass, happily savoring the taste. He was ecstatic at the moment, because the content of the last published newspaper had, as predicted, caused a huge sensation in the New World. The buzz was explosive. His name, along with Roxiu's, was being mentioned by people all over the world. Digging out the truth of a matter, exposing it to everyone, letting the public see the hidden side of things, and simultaneously boosting one's own reputation. For a journalist, what could be more exciting than this? I just wonder where Roxiu ran off to now. If I could dig up some more news about him, it would definitely cause another explosion of public opinion. Morgans took a sip of red wine and thought to himself. Currently, on the sea, apart from Roxiu, there was simply no other figure who could match him in influence. Even the previously prominent Straw Hat and the slowly rising supernovas were completely overshadowed by Roxiu. As a journalist with an extremely keen nose for news, he understood that if he could get more news about Roxiu while the heat was on, the resulting buzz would be unimaginable. And he heard that the four emperors were also paying close attention to Roxiu. Sigh. Such opportunities are rare and cannot be sought. Morgans shook his head and sighed. In the past few days, no news about Roxiu had surfaced. He didn't know where he had gone. I should focus on figuring out how to avoid those annoying Marines. Putting down the wineglass in his hand, Morgans straightened up. Exposing the matter of the Alabasta Kingdom was certainly going to get him targeted by the Marines. He had anticipated this before printing the newspaper. And that was exactly what happened. The albatrosses flying back from various locations were recently relaying one piece of news. The Marines were furious and had sent people to threaten to destroy his headquarters. In response, Morgans could only say they were dreaming. As a journalist with professional integrity, he would not be intimidated by the power of the Marines. However, the Marines were still a top power on the sea, regardless of what he thought. Though he wasn't afraid, he still had to show some respect. He needed to move out of here quickly and choose the next location for his headquarters. And right at that moment. Knock, knock, knock. A series of footsteps suddenly sounded outside the door. The sound approached and stopped right outside the door. A knock sounded. "Come in," Morgan said, looking toward the door. The door was pushed open, and a subordinate wearing a hat rushed in, looking flustered. "What's wrong?" Morgans frowned and asked. "President. The Marines are here." "Huh?" Morgans was visibly stunned. His heart skipped a beat. These guys had actually found him so quickly. Undoubtedly, they were here because he had exposed the news about Roxiu. Damn it! What a coincidence! Before he could say anything else, several people dressed in Marine uniforms walked straight in from outside the door. The leader wore a greatcoat symbolizing Marine justice. His expression was solemn. Morgan's eyelid twitched. As the boss of a news agency, he recognized the man's rank immediately. Marine Headquarters Vice Admiral. "You are not welcome here. Please leave." Although the man's status was high and his strength was likely great, Morgans wouldn't be scared just because of that. This was the World News Press headquarters, and it had managed to stand firm on the sea for many years. It wasn't just filled with people who could write and edit documents. There were quite a few strong individuals here too. If the other party actually decided to fight here, it was uncertain who would win in the end. "Mr. Morgans, President of the World News Press. We are here to cooperate with you. No need to be nervous," the Marine Vice Admiral said slowly, showing a calm expression. Cooperation? Morgans was confused. Did the Marines need to cooperate with him? It seemed like there had never been any mutual interests before. But soon, he figured it out, the Marines must want him to tamper with the news he had already reported. To completely erase the matter of Roxiu in the Alabasta Kingdom. And bribe him with dirty money. Otherwise, what reason could there be for the Marines to specifically come all this way to cooperate with him? When he saw the Marine Vice Admiral pull out a stack of large denomination berries from his coat, he was even more certain of his guess. He couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Although he was a miser, he absolutely would not accept dirty money to report things he didn't want to report, nor did he like others controlling his reporting. Not even the Marines. "If this is about Roxiu, then you should go back," Morgan said coldly, immediately issuing an order for them to leave. The Marine Vice Admiral knew Morgans had misunderstood. He placed the banknotes on the table. "It is indeed about Roxiu. But we aren't asking you to modify the news. We Marines captured Roxiu yesterday. Don't you enjoy collecting big news? How about this piece of news? Morgans heard the news and shrugged. So it wasn't about tampering with the news, then you. Wait a minute. Morgan suddenly froze, realizing the meaning of the last sentence. What did you say? Roxiu was captured? Morgans asked in shock. The Marine Vice Admiral nodded. Morgans was stunned. This news was simply too massive. Without a doubt, reporting this would cause another huge wave. Can we cooperate? The Vice Admiral asked, pushing the money on the table toward Morgans. Yes, absolutely. Morgans said, smiling. Even without the money, he would be willing. A huge scoop delivered right to his doorstep like this was incredibly rare. Roxiu will be publicly executed at Marineford 1 month from now. The headline, President, you should know how to write that, right? The Marine Vice Admiral continued. Hearing this, Morgan's emotions, which he had just managed to settle down, immediately surged again. His bird eyes widened twofold. Did I hear that correctly? At Marine headquarters, a public execution. They wanted to attract the attention of the entire world. And wasn't that exactly the effect he wanted? Morgans couldn't help but swallow. Truly, sitting at home, and a major event falls from the sky. It took him a long while to recover his senses. Of course. This matter is on our news agency, 2 days later. Within the sea area of the Sabaody archipelago. A luxurious cruise ship, dozens of meters tall, was slowly moving across the calm sea. The entire cruise ship could be described with 2 words, extravagant and dominating. How extravagant and dominating! The cruise ship had a total of 16 decks. Every deck was draped with pearls, jadeite, and various precious gems. The uppermost deck was particularly dazzling and brilliant. On the flagpole was a white-backed flag, engraved with the hoof print unique to the Celestial Dragons. This ship was the Celestial Dragons' exclusive luxury cruise ship for their outings. Chapter 65, The Celestial Dragon Family. A group of Marines stood on the ship's deck. Everyone wore an extremely solemn expression. They were ready for battle. Holding their firearms, they vigilantly observed their surroundings. Because they were too nervous. Their foreheads were slick with sweat. Normally, they wouldn't be this tense, but this time was different. A celestial dragon had a screw loose somewhere. They actually wanted to go sightseeing on the Sabaody archipelago. To experience the local customs? Every person on the ship bore immense pressure. The Celestial Dragons. As the most noble people in this world, bar none, they are absolute privileged nobles standing above the law. If anything happened to them, everyone on the ship would suffer. The lightest punishment was being branded with the celestial hoof mark. They would either become slaves to be played with, or they would be sent to the land of storms. To endlessly build the bridge nation, Tequila Wolf. No matter which one. It was enough to make anyone tremble with fear. That was why the Marines were so nervous. And in the center of the deck, several people wearing round glass domes were extremely conspicuous. The one in the very middle had spiked hair, wore sunglasses, sported a chevron mustache, was an older person, and had a relatively sturdy build. The one on the left had straight bangs and was a woman. The one on the right had curly black hair pointing upwards, a plump face, thick lips, and constantly had snot running down. They came from one family, Roseward. From left to right, they were Saint Shalria, Roseward Saint, and Saint Charlos. This time, they had specifically come out from Holy Land Mary Geos to sightsee on the Sabaody archipelago. In the hand of Saint Charlos on the far right, one hand held several iron chains, and the other held a dirty, half-eaten piece of refuse. However, what was on the chains wasn't some kind of cat or dog pet, but rather young girls in the prime of their youth, kneeling on the ground. Then, he threw the filthy object in his hand onto the deck. Before they could even hit the ground, the chains rattled. The girls on the chains scrambled, one after another, trying to catch it with their mouths. Like a pack of starving dogs kept in captivity. Seeing this scene, the Marines on the deck remained silent. No matter who they were, no one dared to step forward and say a word. The older ones didn't even dare to breathe heavily, fearing that any inappropriate reaction might catch the eye of the celestial dragons. Seeing that the filth he threw was accurately caught by the slaves below, Saint Charles smiled contentedly. Slaves are just pigs who waste food. It was already their good fortune to have this to eat. Anyway, they could only die in the end. However, he was getting tired of these slaves. He needed to go to the Sabaody archipelago and choose some new ones. After all, beautiful women should be turned into his wives, and then killed once he got bored of them. Saint Shalria shared the same thoughts as him. But she didn't like keeping a harem. She preferred tormenting slaves for fun. She would take the captain slaves her father raised to discipline, conducting cruel experiments. Although she often played them to death. "Daddy, why aren't we there yet?" Saint Shalria complained impatiently to Roseward Saint. "Soon, soon." Roseward Saint comforted her while sitting atop a tall slave. He then looked at the Marines on the deck and cursed fiercely, "You damn low-class pigs. Why have we been sailing for so long without arriving? You truly are a bunch of good-for-nothing wastes of food." Faced with the scolding of the celestial dragons, the Marines across the entire ship dared not utter a sound. Just then, Saint Charles saw a lone boat on the sea enter his field of vision, sailing ahead. He frowned. The servant beside him immediately knew better and raised the telescope. Saint Charles pressed his eye against the lens. He saw, within the circular frame, a solitary boat sailing towards them. A person was standing on the lone boat. 2 meters tall, black hair, black eyes. "Lowlife! How dare you sail in front of me?" Saint Charles shouted in a high-pitched, squeaky voice. "Damn it! Damn it! Unforgivable sin!" Since leaving Mary Geos, he had been sailing for so long, and anyone who saw their ship rushed to steer clear. Not a single person dared to sail within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Now, some low-class pig from who knows where actually dared to sail in front of them. This could not be tolerated. Hit it! Full speed ahead! Ram him to death! Saint Charles said viciously. As soon as he spoke, the veterans on the ship immediately relayed the order without hesitation. To accelerate the ship. This was an order issued by a celestial dragon. Who would dare disobey? Instantly, the cruise ship accelerated, shooting forward like an arrow. Meanwhile, Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral Drew, who was standing nearby, took the telescope handed to him by his subordinate. He muttered inwardly, "I can only say you're unlucky today. Sailing out at this exact moment. Of all people to provoke, you provoked a celestial dragon." He shook his head and said. At the same time, he pressed the telescope to his eye. When he saw the person on the lone boat, his expression suddenly changed. Immediately afterward, he pulled a bounty poster from his pocket, looked down at it, and his heart suddenly trembled. Roxiu. How could this be? Wasn't he already captured? He rubbed his eyes in disbelief and looked again. It really is Roxiu. Instantly, a chill rose from the soles of his feet. It crawled up his spine like a venomous snake and shot straight to his head. "Stop quickly! Stop the ship, we can't ram him!" Drew shouted. This was Roxiu, a fighting force that surpassed the level of an admiral. They couldn't resist him at all. "You damned thing! How dare you disobey an order? Get lost!" St. Charles's face darkened, and he cursed angrily. He didn't put the Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral in his eyes at all. He was a celestial dragon. Forget the Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral, even if a Marine Vice Admiral or an Admiral came. They would just be the celestial dragon's guard dogs. Do you need to use kind words for guard dogs? Of course not, they are all contemptible wretches who only deserve to be scolded. We can't go over there. He is Ro. Drew said with an anxious expression, trying to persuade them to turn back. But before he could finish, he was viciously interrupted by St. Charles. "If you dare say one more word, I'll shoot you dead." It was obvious. The words of a celestial dragon were an iron decree. The Marine soldiers also understood this. They ignored the Rear Admiral's words, maxed out the ship's power, and went full speed ahead. Seeing this scene, Drew's face turned green. Drew is currently being hunted by the Admiral, so he isn't afraid of the Marines at all. At this moment, his heart was filled with despair. Watching the distance rapidly close, only one thought remained in his mind: it's over. Chapter 66, CP0. The Strongest Shield. St. Charles sniffed, holding a whip in his hand. He walked step by step to Marine Rear Admiral Drew. Low-ranking people are just low-ranking people, trash that only wastes food. What's there to be afraid of for one person? No wonder you Marines can't eliminate pirates. Not just you, all you Marines are despicable pigs. As his voice fell, he raised his arm and whipped down hard. Snap! The whip struck Drew's cloak of justice, and a crack appeared, splitting the word justice in half. To directly attack a Marine headquarters Rear Admiral in front of all the Marines. How arrogant this was! How little he regarded the Marines. However, facing the actions of the celestial dragons, no one present dared to say a word. It was still silent. On the entire luxury cruise ship, there was a deathly silence. Justice, at this moment, seemed worthless. Some young Marines clenched their fists tightly, their knuckles white. Gritting their teeth, they chose not to look at this scene. They became Marines to protect their homes and uphold justice. But the scene before them shook their resolve. They were furious and helpless. The duty of the Marines was to protect the safety of the celestial dragons, unconditionally condoning the actions of the celestial dragons, even if their superior was being humiliated in front of them. They could not step forward and say another word. At this moment, Marine Rear Admiral Drew, being whipped repeatedly. His mind was even blank. His face was extremely grim. On one side were the celestial dragons, on the other was Roxiu. Without a doubt, he couldn't afford to offend either side. So he could only choose to tolerate it. Crack! 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 The whip continued to strike him like raindrops. His dignity as a Marine shattered on the ground at this moment. The harsh sound pierced his ears, causing a sharp pain in his heart. A surge of anger, accompanied by humiliation, suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, he even had a momentary thought of resistance. Buzz! He reached out and grabbed the whip that was coming down again. Drew's face was extremely gloomy. But when he saw the celestial dragon's ugly face, and the flag on the flagpole, fluttering in the wind, emblazoned with the celestial hoof mark, he immediately lost the courage to resist. He lowered his head and withdrew his hand. Trash! You even dare to dodge? You lowly dog, do you want to rebel? St. Charles saw that his whip had been caught by the low-ranking person in front of him, sniffed, and cursed. Then, he threw the whip to the ground and waved behind him. Immediately, 3 people wearing mysterious masks suddenly appeared beside him. No one knew how they appeared. But without exception, they were all wearing white suits and black ties. And wearing a mask. CP0. A trace of horror flashed in Drew's eyes. CP0. An organization directly under the world nobles, the Celestial Dragons. It was known as the Celestial Dragon's strongest shield and the world's strongest intelligence agency. Its members possessed extremely powerful abilities. They had strength comparable to Marine headquarters Rear Admirals, Vice Admirals, and even Quasi-Admirals. How could there be CP0 on this ship, and 3 of them? Drew swallowed, cold sweat streaming down his face. The 3 CP0 members were now coldly staring at Marine headquarters Rear Admiral Drew. The next moment, two of them instantly disappeared from their spots. Coming to Drew's side, one on the left and one on the right. Before he could react, he was held by the two CP0 members, unable to move. Bang! At this moment, a gunshot rang out. A dark bullet traced a trajectory and hit Drew directly between the eyebrows. Blood gushed out, flowing all over the floor. WI. Drew's eyes were filled with despair as he looked at the people in front of him. His face was full of disbelief. He had foreseen that as a Marine, he might die one day. But he had thought he would die fighting pirates, or on the battlefield. He never expected to die at the hands of the celestial dragons he protected. He really wanted to know why. But the only reply he got was the heavy sound of his own body falling to the ground. And St. Rosward's voice, full of disgust. Damn thing! Living is just a waste of food. As he spoke, St. Rosward put away the flintlock in his hand, not even bothering to look at it again. It was as if killing a Marine Rear Admiral was like crushing an ant. He felt no psychological burden at all. After all, in all these years he'd lived, the Marines who had died by his hand were far more numerous than pirates. Let alone Rear Admirals, he had killed several Vice Admirals. Gulp! This sudden scene made the Marines present swallow their saliva. Cold sweat streamed down their bodies. Their faces turned even paler. Their eyes looked at Rear Admiral Drew lying on the deck, then stared intently at the three mysterious figures who had suddenly appeared. The thought of resistance that had arisen in their hearts immediately vanished. Their bodies were trembling. Who were these people? They had controlled their superiors' movements in an instant. And they had no idea where they came from. The three CP0 members ignored everyone's gazes, no expression could be seen on the faces beneath their three masks. But the cold killing intent emanating from them showcased their ruthlessness and power. They felt no ripple in their hearts regarding the fate of the Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral. This was CP0. An organization established solely to protect the celestial dragons. The strongest shield. No matter what outrageous things the celestial dragons did, they had to be unconditionally supported. And all obstacles in their path had to be cleared. How disgusting! Quickly dispose of this trash. St. Charlos sniffed, looking with extreme disgust at the corpse still gushing blood. The three CP0 members heard this, turned their heads, and scanned the Marine soldiers present. Their meaning was self-evident. Why, yes, sir. At your command. The Marines who were glanced at felt their hair stand on end. A chill ran down their spines. About 10 people came out with terrified expressions, and dragged away their superior. Drew's cloak, representing justice, was used as a rag to wipe the bloodstains on the deck. Everything seemed utterly ironic. Faster! It's about to crash. Crush this lowly pig! St. Charlos said, clapping his hands excitedly as he watched it get closer and closer. Meanwhile, on the other side, on the solitary boat, evil-faced Roxio crossed his arms over his chest, a slight smile playing on his lips as he watched the luxury cruise ship approaching him. He. Celestial dragon pigs, I've been looking for you for a long time. What a fat sheep delivered right to my doorstep. After leaving the small island, he had come all the way to Sabaody Archipelago. He knew that celestial dragons would come here. His original plan was to wait for them on the island. But he didn't expect to encounter them on the high seas. This saved him a lot of trouble. The next devil fruit is within reach. Chapter 67, Instantly Killing CP0. On the deck of the luxury cruise ship, St. Charlos wore a twisted smile. He picked up the iron chain shackling the girl and shook it vigorously. Clang, clang. The iron chain rattled. The young girls, shackled, received the command and crawled forward mechanically. They led St. Charlos to the bow of the ship. Good. Smash him to pieces. St. Charlos was delighted to see this scene. He had already envisioned it. This lone boat, under the powerful propulsion of the cruise ship, would be smashed into splinters. The lowly pig standing on it would also be crushed to smithereens. The 3 CP0 agents standing nearby remained still on the deck, like 3 wooden posts. But their gazes were all fixed on the lone boat ahead. The next moment, when they clearly saw Roxio's face, their eyes, hidden beneath their masks, instantly changed, as if they had seen something terrifying. Just as they were about to speak, the ship had already crashed into it. With a bang, a violent sound immediately rang out. Without surprise, the cruise ship collided with the lone boat. The lone boat, as the celestial dragons had expected, shattered into pieces, with splinters flying everywhere. However, one thing was different from what they had imagined. There was no scene of blood and gore. Only a figure, in the instant before the cruise ship hit, left the lone boat. The figure leaped lightly, landing on the luxury cruise ship. Celestial dragon pigs? Having a good time, aren't you? Roxio stood at the edge of the deck, looking at the celestial dragons before him with interest. And those slaves shackled by iron chains. Roxio! The CP0 agents exclaimed in horror. They were not only the strongest shield, but also the strongest intelligence organization. They recognized this person at a glance. But, according to Marineford's news, wasn't Roxio arrested a few days ago? How could he appear here again? Could it be that marine intelligence made a mistake? What exactly is going on? Several question marks appeared in the minds of the 3 CP0 agents. Roxio? What kind of thing is that? Saint Charles said impatiently, hearing this. He didn't feel anything amiss due to the CP0 agent's unusual demeanor. He still had the air of I am the greatest in the world. In his eyes, there were only 2 kinds of people. One was celestial dragons, and the other was commoners. Without a doubt, this guy who wasn't crushed to death was just a commoner. Since he was a commoner, he certainly wouldn't dare to touch him. My lord, this Roxio is an extremely dangerous existence. Please move away immediately, call Mary Geos, and request backup. One of the CP0 agents quickly said. Given the current situation, why Roxio was here was not something they needed to delve into. The important thing was to ensure the safety of the celestial dragons as much as possible. Roxio's strength. They knew it well. Even if they all attacked together, they might not necessarily win. They absolutely had to request backup. Damn things. You're useless trash too. Just like those Marines, all of you are garbage wasting food. Saint Charles was furious when he heard these lackeys actually wanted him to flee. He pulled out a gun from his waist, intending to give them a bullet. But perhaps due to his excessive obesity, or lack of exercise, he couldn't pull out the flintlock from his waist. Daddy! He looks good. I want him to be my slave. At this moment, Saint Shaoria, a celestial dragon nearby, looked at the appearing Roxio, her eyes flashing, revealing a twisted smile. Roseward Saint smiled upon hearing this lowly trash, you can play with him however you want. He didn't know Roxio, and even if he did, he wouldn't care. Just a commoner. As he spoke, he raised the flintlock in his hand. Commoner. Kneel. Roxio's eye twitched, somewhat amused by these celestial dragon pigs. He. Very good. I originally planned to just kill you guys directly. But now, I've changed my mind. I'm going to torture you thoroughly. For evil face Roxio, killing people was interesting, but torturing people was even more so. Torturing the world's top nobles. Just thinking about it was amusing. The 3 CP0 agents' hearts sank upon hearing this. Indeed, Roxio was here for the celestial dragons. The next moment, the 3 exchanged glances. Then, they split up. Each of the 3 took one person. They wanted to forcibly remove the celestial dragons from here. Damn fellows! Don't touch me with your filthy hands. The celestial dragons were furious when they saw these watchdogs actually trying to touch their bodies. They were immediately enraged. However, before the CP0 agents could make their next move, Roxio moved. A powerful aura erupted. Buzz AC Breeze blew, and his figure vanished in the blink of an eye. He headed towards one of the CP0 agents. His speed was as fast as lightning. As soon as his figure arrived, his fist swung down. So fast. The targeted CP0 agent's eye twitched violently. He raised his fist to meet the attack. The next instant, only a cracking sound was heard. His arm, the moment it touched Roxio's knuckles, under the immense energy infusion, broke and pierced out from the flesh. The entire arm became a bloody mess. It was completely crippled. However, this was just the beginning. Roxio's lips curled into a cold smile. Several more punches landed. The CP0 agent's 2 legs, and his other arm, were twisted into pretzels. All 4 limbs were crippled. The CP0 agent collapsed to the ground, completely losing the ability to move. Using the same method, Roxio, with lightning speed, swept past the other 2 CP0 agents. Before Roxio, the strongest shield, whose strength was comparable to a Marine headquarters rear admiral, or even a vice admiral, didn't even have the ability to fight back. Several screams echoed. On the deck, there were 2 more CP0 agents with their limbs crushed. Blood flowed from their bodies, staining the deck red. Just like Marine headquarters rear admiral Drew before. Only, this time, the roles of hunter and prey had been swapped. At this point, seeing this terrifying scene, the celestial dragons finally realized the seriousness of the problem. The 3, who feared neither heaven nor earth and naturally considered themselves descendants of gods, showed an unprecedented look of terror on their faces. This person before them seemed different from other commoners. It seemed he truly dared to kill them. Roxio wiped the blood from his hands, grinned, and walked step by step towards the celestial dragons. Thump, thump, thump. His footsteps echoed on the deck. The 3 celestial dragons stared at Roxio with wide eyes. You bastard, you can't kill me. We are descendants of gods. Dare to touch us, and you will face the judgment of the world government. Roxio walked up to Saint Charlos, who had already wet himself. He smirked and said, I have a math problem for you. What is 1000 minus 7? Chapter 68, Killing a Celestial Dragon. Awakening the Demon of the Mountain. Ah. Saint Charlos was confused. What is a math problem? I never studied that. He lowered his head and looked at his 10 fingers. Sweat poured down his face. His legs trembled uncontrollably. He fumbled for a long time but couldn't figure it out. As celestial dragons, they lived a pampered life from birth. They fundamentally never thought about studying. Studying this stuff, that was the responsibility of the lower classes, meant to serve them. After struggling for a while, he blurted out a number, it equals 7. Roxio looked at him with disgust. Immediately after. Snap. Saint Charles's finger was crushed. A scream like a butchered pig rang out from his mouth. Damn it! You dare attempt godslaying. The world government won't let you off. A CP0 lying on the ground was gritting his teeth. Enduring the severe pain in his body, he said viciously. In this moment, what he thought of was still the celestial dragon. The master hadn't called, but the dog started barking wildly. This was CP0. A group of indoctrinated fanatics who had been brainwashed since childhood. They had no thoughts and fundamentally couldn't think. They couldn't even be called normal people anymore. Puff. Roxio casually flicked a wooden skewer, piercing the center of the other party's forehead. Killing him instantly. Noisy. Then, Roxio looked at Saint Charlos, revealing a cold smile, and said, I'll give you one more chance. If you don't answer, you die. You bunch of useless trash, why are you still standing there? Hurry up and kill him. Saint Charlos was so terrified he nearly soiled himself. This person in front of him was too vicious. He knew the other party would actually do it. And he really couldn't answer. This was too damn hard. He could only vent his anger on the Marines aboard the cruise ship. The Marine soldiers were sweating profusely at this moment. Everything happened too fast. The three mysterious figures who had seemed incredibly strong in their eyes just moments ago were defeated in the blink of an eye. However, they dared not disobey the celestial dragon's orders. Even though they knew the person in front of them was troublesome, the fear of the celestial dragons was already etched into their bones, forcing them to make a choice and face the difficulty head-on. Charge together. Suddenly, someone yelled. He gripped his long spear and rushed out of the crowd. Immediately after, seeing someone take the lead, the Marine soldiers braced themselves and followed. Thump, thump, thump. Their footsteps pounded on the deck. They raised their muskets, aiming at Roxiu. A bunch of insects. Roxia sneered. The next moment, a powerful aura spread out from his body. Suddenly, boom, an extremely turbulent hockey suddenly appeared in the sky. The color was dense, covering the entire cruise ship. As the Marine soldiers watched in shock, this wave of aura, carrying infinite might, pressed down. Swoosh, instantly. The Marines present, the moment they were touched by the aura wave, without exception, immediately fainted. Their eyelids rolled back, they foamed at the mouth, their bodies went limp, and they all fell unconscious. The celestial dragons, naturally, were the same. Lying stiffly on the deck, completely insensible. This is Conqueror's hockey. The CP0 lying on the ground was utterly shocked. Sweat beaded on his forehead. These Marine soldiers might not know what this was, but he understood. Hockey that could knock people out was, without a doubt, Conqueror's hockey, which only 1 in a million people possessed. But according to the leaked intelligence, Roxia shouldn't know hockey at all. What exactly is going on? Damn the Marines. Their intelligence was all fake. The CP0 suddenly realized something and muttered in disbelief. The information from Marineford said they had successfully captured Roxiu. But clearly, this was false news. Because Roxiu was standing right in front of him, real and tangible. Moreover, he was going to kill a celestial dragon. He couldn't imagine that the Marines, just to maintain their prestige, would announce false news to the world, claiming Roxiu had been successfully arrested. It was an enormous joke. Damn it! Roxiu was never arrested. He's still getting stronger. I must transmit this message to the world government. The CP0 gritted his teeth, his eyeballs seemingly ready to burst. Facing the Conqueror's hockey, he, too, was enduring immense pressure. There was no chance to transmit the message. Roxiu flashed, appeared before them, and directly twisted their necks. Then he twisted their heads off and tossed them aside. Gurgle, gurgle, the head rolled on the ground like a ball. Conqueror's hockey is quite useful. Roxiu clapped his hands and murmured, looking at the collapsed Marine soldiers. It truly was the perfect tool for clearing out trash. Afterward, he glanced at the 3 unconscious celestial dragons and shook his head. Boring. He had originally wanted to torture them for a bit of fun. But now, he had lost interest. He acted swiftly and decisively. He also twisted off the heads of the 3 men and placed them together with the heads of the 3 CP0 agents. Then, Roxiu's figure flashed. He vanished into the interior of the cruise ship. When he reappeared, he was already inside the luxury cruise ship's treasury vault. In front of him, various precious jewels and gems were piled high, shimmering with gold and silver light, dazzling the eye. These treasures were, without a doubt, loot plundered by the celestial dragons from various countries. However, Roxiu wasn't very interested in these things. A wooden box placed among the gold, silver, and jewels, however, made his eyes light up. He walked over, reached out, picked up the wooden box, and weighed it in his hand. The weight was neither heavy nor light. It seemed, it wasn't meant to hold treasure. He gripped the lid of the wooden box and lifted it open. Immediately, Roxiu's pupils contracted. Lying inside the box was clearly a fruit. With its strange patterns and pineapple-like appearance, what else could it be but a devil fruit? Taking the fruit out, Roxia held it in his palm. Ding! Devil fruit detected. Host, do you wish to absorb the special energy? Absorb. The moment the system voice sounded, Roxia secretly thought to himself. He had been waiting for this moment for who knows how long. Of course, he accepted without hesitation. As soon as he spoke, the system space manifested in his mind. The devil fruit in his hand vanished, then appeared before the gate of hell. Subsequently, the devil fruit flew into the gate of hell and disappeared within it. Time passed minute by minute. After a while, a loud rumble was heard. The gate of hell suddenly flashed. In the next instant, the chains wrapped around the doorframe were unlocked by a mysterious force. A powerful aura permeated the space. Accompanied by a tremor, a demon stepped out from the gate of hell. Green skin, a massive and obese body covered in yellow lumps, short legs and arms, and a Japanese-style haircut. It was precisely the demon of the mountain Bogard. Chapter 69, The Correct Way to Control a Demon. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have successfully activated the mountain demon. The host can independently house the activated demon. The host can seal the demon again. The moment Bogard stepped out of the gate of hell, the system's considerate voice immediately sounded. Hearing this, Roxio couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. He can house demons and even seal them again. This function is truly awesome. Having the restrictions imposed by the system will save a lot of trouble in the future. After all, these demons are all unruly individuals. At least, he doesn't have much goodwill towards the demon lord, who even tricked the 3 good employees like Valmont. The system daddy is still the best. Roxio exclaimed. Bogard's heavy body emerged from the spatial rift. It landed on the luxury cruise ship, creating a huge thud. Fortunately, the celestial dragon's ship was made of sturdy materials, otherwise, if Bogard fell into the water, she would become a new type of sea king. Bogard looked around, flicked her large tongue, and was very excited. He. Finally free. After being imprisoned in hell for so long, to see the light of day again, the joy was self-evident, although the time in between was a bit long. But she didn't expect that fellow, the demon lord, to be quite trustworthy. The decision to work together to get him out was indeed correct. At this moment, Bogard really wanted to feast. She had been hungry for thousands of years inside, and her magic power had been greatly reduced. She had almost forgotten the original taste of food. Just in time, there was a person standing in front of her. Looks like he tastes good. Slurp. Bogard licked her lips, smacked them, and stared at Roxia with crimson eyes, full of greed. Truly a complete glutton. Roxia's mouth twitched involuntarily, his expression neither pleased nor displeased. Bogard, ranked second among the 8 great demons, devoured all things, like a living Pichot. No matter what she saw, her first thought was always to taste it. That iron stomach was like a bottomless pit, endless. Of course, what she ate could be converted into strength. No. Bogard's expression suddenly froze on her face. Then, she showed an intrigued expression. How do you have the aura of the demon lord on you, kid? He. That guy, the demon lord, wouldn't have possessed you, would he? No. Kid, who exactly are you? Roxia rubbed his temples, suddenly regretting letting this demon out. She seemed a bit unintelligent. In fact, she really wasn't very smart. After all, she had been imprisoned in hell for thousands of years. Both her intelligence and magic power were decreasing day by day, showing a negative curve. In terms of average intelligence, Roxio could probably outdo her by 5 demon lords right now. Bogard. Your freedom was given by me. From now on, you will only obey my commands. Roxio said indifferently, declaring his sovereignty. He. Bogard heard this, patted her belly, and looked nonchalant. She was out. Why would she listen to what a little brat had to say? First, get me some food. Bogard smacked her lips, saying with a somewhat threatening tone. Roxiu smiled. He said nothing more. He raised his hand and aimed at Bogard. Swish! A flash of light appeared. Bogard, who was a huge mass on the ship just a moment ago, instantly vanished. When she reappeared on the cruise ship, Bogard's expression changed. Her arrogance was gone, her face filled with terror. What just happened was too strange. This person merely raised a hand, and she returned to that incredibly detested space. She didn't even need any sealing artifact. Was this person in front of her even stronger than the undying god? Bogard couldn't help but swallow. Who exactly are you, kid? She was a little scared. Do I need to repeat myself? Roxia said, crossing his arms over his chest. Bogard cowered. After staying in a dark place for thousands of years, she yearned for freedom more than ever. Although now, this freedom required a little restriction. But having finally come to the outside world, how could she be willing to go back? Following some commands was nothing compared to being sealed away again. Even a child could tell what was more important. Bogard's degenerated brain could still distinguish the pros and cons. Roxia looked at Bogard's reaction, very satisfied. This was exactly the effect he wanted. First, give these demons a small shock, then things would be easier to handle. However, you can't just give slaps, you also need a sweet date. You can eat these unconscious people on the ship freely. Don't touch those 6 heads. Roxiu pointed at the unconscious Marines on the deck and slowly said. Bogard's eyes flashed with a sharp glint. It seemed following this person wasn't so bad. As long as there was food to eat, that was perfect. Bogard impatiently opened her huge mouth and took a ferocious gulp from the deck. The enormous suction force swept up the lying Marines and headless corpses. They were sucked in like a storm. Bogard burped and licked her lips. The taste is not bad. Such rich blood and flesh are rare. Too bad there's too little. How could the people in the pirate world have weak blood and flesh power? Don't rush. You'll have your fill when it's time to eat. Roxia said indifferently. Bogard's size is determined by what she eats. According to the original work, Bogard can grow as large as a mountain. The one in front of him was barely the size of a medium-sized warship. Undoubtedly. She was starved inside, and her size corresponded to her strength. Bogard's current strength is hard to say, it needs to be improved quickly to show those damn flies a thing or two. This requires eating more food. Just right. The pirate world never lacks food. Those super large sea kings in the calm belt are all individually plump. He. Bogard licked her lips, her face full of anticipation. Roxia raised his hand and temporarily placed Bogard in the system space. The cruise ship was specially built for celestial dragons. Even without wind, it could sail in the calm belt with its advanced power system. But with Bogard, this ship couldn't move. Let's go to a marine branch first and see how Bogard's effect is. Roxiu murmured, stroking his chin. After dealing with everything, Roxiu's figure disappeared, continuing to search the ship's treasury to see if there were any other devil fruits. After searching around, there were none. Roxiu wasn't discouraged, devil fruits and such would come eventually once his strength improved. At worst, he would directly attack the Holy Land Mary Geos and slaughter the celestial dragon's nest. However, it was not suitable to do so now, as there were still many strong individuals in the world government. Such as the God's Knights hidden in the dark, specifically protecting the celestial dragons, such as Kon, the Gorosei, and Emu. But I can annoy them first. Roxia chuckled mischievously. Picking up the 3 celestial dragon heads on the deck, Roxia leaped up and hung them on the flagpole emblazoned with the celestial dragon's hoof print, from left to right, a neat family. Then, he hung the other 3 CP0 heads below. Riding the celestial dragon's ship, they set sail. Chapter 70, Attacking Marine G2 Branch. 2 days later. The first half of the Grand Line. The sky was azure, the sun was bright, a gentle breeze brushed by, and the temperature was pleasant. On the calm sea, silverfish occasionally leaped out of the water, splashing droplets everywhere. Marine G2 branch. Located in this sea area. At this moment, on the branch's lookout tower, a marine soldier, as usual, patrolled the surrounding sea. A simple stand held a long monocular telescope, manned by 2 rotating sentries. However, today was a little different. Branch Rear Admiral Bain, for some unknown reason, also came up to the lookout tower. And he brought a wicker chair to sunbathe there. "You do your thing. Don't mind me." Branch Rear Admiral Bain lay comfortably, basking in the sun and speaking softly. The 2 marine soldiers nodded nervously and immediately got back to work. They worked much harder than usual. There was no other way, their superior was lying right beside them, so they dared not slack off or cut corners. Moreover, if they showed a good attitude and were appreciated by the Rear Admiral, they might even get promoted in the future. "The weather today is really nice." Bain stretched lazily, muttering to himself. Ever since Roxiu was captured by Marineford, there had been much less trouble at sea. No more reckless pirates inexplicably showing up to launch sneak attacks. It was also because of this that he had been able to relax recently. But such days of relaxation wouldn't last long. After all, Roxiu's public execution was already on the agenda. As one of the branches, they naturally had to send some key personnel. Fleet Admiral Sengoku is really something. Does executing one pirate really require so many people? The Rear Admiral shook his head and sighed. Roxiu had already been captured. Even with a public execution, there couldn't be any accidents. After all, he had no forces behind him, just a lone individual, unlike the 4 emperors, where there might be people coming to rescue them. Bain-sama. A ship is approaching the branch. Just as Bain was pouting, a marine soldier suddenly spoke. "Ha?" Bain was startled, frowning. Was his pleasant sunbath going to end early? Is it a pirate ship? No, it's not a pirate ship. It's a luxurious cruise ship. It seems to be a Celestial Dragon's cruise ship. What? Bain immediately stood up from his chair when he heard the words Celestial Dragons. A Celestial Dragon's cruise ship? Why would their ship be sailing in this sea area? Bain pondered for a moment. It didn't make sense. Recently, the only celestial dragons who had left Holy Land Mary Geos seemed to be those heading to Sabaody Archipelago. However, these questions only flashed through his mind for a moment before Bain dismissed them. Regardless of the reason, the celestial dragons coming here was a huge deal. If they were to be neglected, the consequences were unimaginable. It would be much more serious than a pirate raid on the branch. "Yes, sir." "It seems not quite right." Suddenly, the marine soldier on lookout spoke again, but this time, he was stammering, cold sweat pouring down his forehead, as if he had seen something terrifying. "What's not right? Is it or isn't it a Celestial Dragon's cruise ship?" Bain was a bit impatient. You can't even do a simple lookout properly, and you still want to get promoted and rich in the future. Go back to farming. "Sir." I think I saw Roxiu." Bain's mouth twitched fiercely. He deftly kicked the soldier away. Roxiu was clearly locked up and impelled down right now. How could he possibly appear here? And on a celestial dragon ship, no less. "You brat! Just you wait until I'm done with you." Bain spat, realizing he had to do it himself. He stood up and walked to the long wooden telescope, pressing his eyelid against the eyepiece. Within the round lens, a scene unfolded. A luxuriously decorated cruise ship slowly advanced across the sea. It is indeed a Celestial Dragon's cruise ship, Bain thought to himself. Besides them, no one would dare to sail such a luxurious ship on the high seas, otherwise, it would soon be surrounded by pirates and looted. Since it was the Celestial Dragons, what was there to panic about? Just receive them well. Could anyone possibly be bold enough to attack the Celestial Dragons? His gaze slowly moved upward, raising the round lens. His vision focused on the celestial dragon hoofprint, exclusive to the celestial dragons. However, the next moment, his heart clenched suddenly. His expression was exactly the same as the soldier he had just kicked away. He saw 3 celestial dragons' heads hanging on the flagpole, still wearing their exclusive glass domes. Below them were 3 masked figures. The celestial dragons were killed. Bane felt it hard to breathe. The world nobles, the celestial dragons who were above the Marines, were actually killed and hung up, paraded through the streets. Was the world about to change? And most importantly, a person who looked very much like Roxio was sitting on the flagpole, with one leg dangling. No! That was Roxio. Besides this guy, who else would have such guts to publicly kill celestial dragons? Boom! Thinking of this, he felt his mind suddenly explode. Quick! Quickly! Notify Vice Admiral Sama. Enemy attack! Bane roared. 10 minutes later. Marine G2 branch. The alarm sounded. The sound spread across the entire branch island. This was an alarm that only sounded when a major event occurred. It might not even ring once in decades. But this time, it rang. All Marines in the branch, the moment they heard this sound, immediately picked up their weapons and assembled at the branch entrance. Marine Branch Vice Admiral and G2 Branch Commander Gummel stood at the very front of the crowd. Sweat poured down his face. His heart rate surged. The strongest rookie Roxio had appeared, and he had even killed celestial dragons. Either piece of news was enough to make him break out in a cold sweat. Gummel held 2 katanas in his hands, swallowed, and felt immense pressure. Just then, a black afterimage streaked across the horizon, like a black lightning bolt. Boom! It landed on the G2 branch island, kicking up a shower of gravel. It was Roxio. The moment he saw this person, Gummel's heart skipped a beat. His last sliver of hope vanished. Roxio, who was captured and about to be publicly executed, had truly appeared here. Interesting. Quite cooperative. Looking at the Marines who had already assembled, ready to meet him, Roxio smiled. Then, he raised his arm and shouted, "Don't worry, your opponent isn't me." With that said, the next moment, Roxio pressed his arm down. A massive figure descended from above, crashing between Roxio and the Marines. Time to eat. Chapter 71, Time to Eat. Annihilating G2. A body as massive as a Marine warship lay before the branch Marines, an immense pressure washing over them. The Marine soldiers' pupils constricted as they saw the monster that had suddenly appeared, and they involuntarily retreated a few steps. Sweat dripped from their foreheads down their cheeks onto the ground. What is this thing? Is it a Sea King? How can that be? How can a Sea King appear here? This is a branch island. The Marine soldiers clutched their weapons tightly, their hearts trembling. Having dealt with the sea for so many years, they had seen many strange creatures. But clearly, this thing in front of them was beyond their knowledge. It didn't look like a Sea King, nor did it resemble any ordinary creature. An unknown fear permeated the hearts of the Marines. It made them unconsciously grip their weapons tighter. As if, at this moment, only these could bring them some sense of security. Vice Admiral Gummel of the Marine Branch also had a grim expression. He stared directly at the green-skinned creature before him. He searched his mind. There was absolutely no information about this thing. It was as if it had suddenly appeared in this world. But even though he didn't know what it was, judging from the oppressive aura it exuded, it was definitely not a simple foe. It was a complete and utter monster. He. More food. Compared to the tension of the Marine soldiers, Bogard was much more excited and relaxed. This was all food. She unconsciously licked her lips, her crimson gaze sweeping over the Marines. The soldiers who were swept by her gaze immediately felt their legs tremble and their arms shake violently. A great terror rose in their hearts. Some soldiers even wanted to just drop their guns and run. After all, they had never seen such a scene. Usually, they only dealt with pirates, and no matter how dangerous or strong the opponent was, they were still human. But this thing now brought a feeling that was too shocking. The unknown is always the most terrifying. Even without making a move, just standing there was enough to strike fear into their hearts. Steady! No matter what it is, it's just flesh and blood, and it will eventually be destroyed by cannon fire. As a Marine Branch Vice Admiral, Dumb Mills still had composure. He suppressed the fear in his heart and roared. The opponent's aura was too strong. If this continued, the Marines would collapse before the fight even began. He didn't believe that with such a large body on the other side, and so many people and guns on their own side, they couldn't turn the opponent into a sieve. Fire! Kill her! As soon as his order fell. Immediately. The Marine soldiers recovered, gritted their teeth, and pulled the triggers of the guns they held tightly. Bang bang bang! Thump thump thump! Gunshots rang out incessantly. Dark bullets streaked through the air like raindrops, landing on Bogard's body. However, the attack power of these bullets was indeed no different from raindrops in front of Bogard's thick skin. They couldn't even break through her defense. Bogard scratched her belly, which was feeling a little ticklish from the hits, and looked down at the little specks with disdain. Ants, stop resisting. Just become my food. As she spoke, Bogard reached out and grabbed downwards. The giant hand descended, carrying immense power. The Marine soldiers were already terrified. Their always effective firearms almost all hit their target. But the opponent's skin wasn't even broken. How could they fight like this? This is a monster, a monster. We can't win. The Marine soldiers, having lost the effectiveness of their only reliance, their firearms, were about to break into a chaotic rout. Branch Vice Admiral Gummel's face trembled, and the hair on his body stood on end. He was also shocked. What kind of monster was this? Able to withstand gunpowder with its bare body. How hard must its skin be to do that? Even an admiral, without using armament hockey or devil fruit abilities, couldn't take that with their body. Damn it! Take this sword! His teeth ground together. It had come to this, there was only one option, attack. Instead of retreating, he advanced, trying to surprise her with his sword. Buzz, his aura sank. Wielding the twin swords in his hands, he slashed towards Bogard. Clap! His figure leaped into the air, and just as he was about to hit Bogard, he was slapped away. Boom! He tumbled several times on the ground before his body finally came to a stop. As one of the 8 great demons, the force of Bogard's single strike was enough to shatter him to pieces. Too weak. Bogard smacked her lips. Immediately after, she looked down at the Marine soldiers, patted her belly, and began her buffet mode. Undoubtedly, this was a one-sided battle. In front of Bogard, these Marine soldiers had no room to resist. 10 minutes later, the battle ended. Roxio stood aside, silently observing Bogard's body. At this moment, he was a little disappointed. Because Bogard had eaten the Marines, and even gnawed on the buildings of the G2 branch. Although her body had grown a bit larger than before, it wasn't by much. The effect seemed not very good. It seems this is still not enough. I still need to eat sea kings. The vitality of sea kings should nourish her and make her grow much larger. Roxiu murmured. First, put Bogard in the calm belt, then go to the New World to find the 4 emperors. Thinking of this, he put the well-fed Bogard back into the system space, with no intention of staying longer. Roxio's figure flashed and disappeared from the spot, heading towards the celestial dragon ship. And not long after he left, a golden figure, moving at an extremely fast speed, rushed towards the G2 branch. The next moment, he landed on the ground, the yellow photons dissipated, and Kizaru revealed himself from within. Kizaru's eyelids drooped as he looked at the barren G2 branch, somewhat confused. He had specifically come from headquarters to announce the public execution of Roxiu and to bring people from the branch. But what was with these sights before him? Did I come to the wrong place? He mumbled to himself, patting his head and pouting, "Oh dear, am I really getting senile?" But soon, he realized something was wrong. It seemed he hadn't come to the wrong place, rather, this place had been attacked. The branch was swept clean. Realizing this, Kizaru frowned. Damn it! Who was it? Kizaru's usually nonchalant expression turned serious. Who would dare attack the Marine G2 branch and sweep this place clean? Were there pirates this powerful in the first half of the Grand Line? Wait. This is... Kizaru's eyes swept over an area in front of him, and he took off his orange glasses. Where the branch office building once stood, all buildings had vanished, and several huge footprints were visible on the ground. What is this thing? Kizaru leaped and landed next to the footprints, somewhat bewildered. Judging by these footprints, it didn't seem to be human, but rather some colossal creature. Not pirates? What a giant creature! But what kind of creature would destroy buildings, and even leave no remnants? Where did those buildings go? Having traversed the seas for so many years, even the well-informed Kizaru had never seen such a strange phenomenon. A massive marine branch had simply vanished mysteriously. And not only had the marines disappeared, but other things had also vanished without a trace. Eerie. Too eerie. Just then, to Kizaru's front left, some fallen rubble suddenly stirred. Chapter 72, This monster is called Bogard? Heading to the New World. Someone is still alive. Kizaru's powerful observation haki instantly spread out. Indeed, there was a sign of life among the rubble. The next moment, Kizaru arrived beside the rubble and moved the stones aside. Inside the rubble was a marine soldier who had miraculously survived. His face was covered in terror, and he was continuously muttering to himself. "Don't eat me." Kizaru reached out, grabbed the marine soldier's collar, and lifted him up. "Snap out of it. What did you see?" "It was a monster. A giant monster. She's called Bogard, she has green skin, she's a man-eating monster." I also saw Roxiu." The surviving marine soldier said in terror, his eyes unfocused. Hearing the name Roxiu, Kizaru's heart immediately tightened, developing a strong resistance to those two words. However, he quickly shook his head, disagreeing with the marine soldier's statement. What a joke! Roxiu had already been thrown into Impel Down. How could he possibly appear here? It seemed this guy had been scared witless and was starting to talk nonsense. He casually tossed the soldier aside. Kizaru scratched his head and began to ponder deeply. For a strictly trained soldier to be scared into this state, something truly terrifying must have happened here. This made him involuntarily think of those massive footprints. Was it this monster? Has green skin. Bogard. Such an unfamiliar name. Kizaru stroked his chin and muttered. Is there anyone named Bogard on the seas? Seems unlikely. I wonder if the fleet admiral has heard of her. Shaking his head, Kizaru searched here for a while longer, but ultimately found nothing suspicious. He turned and left, rushing toward Marineford at an even faster speed. I must report this matter to the fleet admiral as soon as possible. Besides Roxiu, there's actually an unknown entity threatening marine justice. Outside the Sabaody archipelago, in the sea area near the Red Line. This place gathered marines, the underworld, and pirates. Pirate ships of various shapes wandered in this area. Without a doubt. Those who could pass the trials of the first half of the Grand Line and reach this point were the elite among pirates, beings who gave the marines massive headaches. At this moment, on massive pirate ships shaped like various animals, pirates gathered on the decks, discussing the major events that had recently occurred. Did you hear? That guy, Roxiu, the so-called future fifth emperor, was arrested by the marines. I heard he's going to be publicly executed at Marine headquarters in a little over 10 days. Damn it, I thought he might draw some marine attention away from us, but I didn't expect him to get caught. He deserved it, being so high profile. And having such thin forces, it's normal he got caught. I think his strength is just average, maybe he's not even as strong as our captain. Otherwise, if he was as strong as the papers claimed, how could he be arrested so easily? He, you only dare to say that now. A few people were drinking and discussing loudly. The matter concerning Roxiu was the pirate's favorite topic of conversation after meals. Now that Roxiu was arrested, the pirates had nothing to worry about. And similar scenes were playing out on other pirate ships as well. However, just as they were chatting happily, a pirate at the bow of the ship suddenly exclaimed, "Look over there! There's a luxury cruise ship." He held a telescope, watching the luxurious vessel slowly approaching. When he saw the distinctive hull, his expression immediately changed. "It looks like a celestial dragon's ship." "What? A celestial dragon's ship?" With a roar. When these pirates heard celestial dragons, they immediately lost all interest in idle chatter. They rushed up together, fixing their gaze on the giant ship speeding toward them in the distance. "It really is a celestial dragon's ship. It looks like all the celestial dragons on board are dead. Holy cow! Someone killed celestial dragons. It's Roxiu." An unknown pirate suddenly shouted this out. He saw it, and naturally, others saw it too. Everyone watched the scene before them in disbelief. Just moments ago they were discussing Roxiu, and the next second they saw him in person. But shouldn't he be at Marineford right now? Why is he here? And he even killed celestial dragons. Celestial dragons. The privileged nobles of this world. Although, as pirates, none of them disliked celestial dragons, and they often considered killing one to be the highest honor. But that was just a thought. People who actually dared to do it, they hadn't even heard of such a person, let alone seen one. After all, harming a celestial dragon would result in being hunted down by the entire Marineford. Meanwhile, Roxiu, sitting on the deck on the other side, couldn't even be bothered to glance at the pirates on the pirate ships. Demon Bogart had already been placed by him on a deserted island in the calm belt, where she was eating. So his current goal was very clear: go to the New World and challenge the four emperors. He couldn't be bothered with the other small fry. The ship slowly sailed across the sea. Roxiu sat with his arms crossed over his chest, resting his eyes. As he passed by the ships of those so-called great pirates, pairs of shocked eyes fell upon him. The pirates who had just been bragging on the deck immediately didn't dare to breathe loudly. Every single one of them was trembling in fear. They had never experienced this kind of heart-stopping fear, even when facing the Marines. The severed head of the celestial dragon hanging from the flagpole of the celestial dragon's ship brought them too great a shock. Such a fierce pirate was far more terrifying than the Marines. At the same time, other people in the area also observed Roxiu and the suspended celestial dragon's head. Among them were spies planted by the Marines among the pirates. There were also pirates who had come from the New World to gather intelligence. They picked up their den mushi, took photos, and, filled with shock, quietly disappeared into the crowd. About 10 minutes later, Roxiu opened his eyes. He stood up from the deck of the celestial dragon's ship. His figure leaped lightly, landing on the water surface. The next moment, the magic of the rabbit talisman activated, and instantly, a surging wave appeared on the sea surface. Roxiu stepped toward the red line like an arrow. The onlookers watched this scene, every single one of them with their mouths agape. Row. Roxiu, what is he doing? His target seems to be the red line. Could it be that he intends to climb the red line barehanded to reach the New World? Everyone involuntarily drew a sharp breath and swallowed. Generally, there are two ways to enter the New World from the first half of the Grand Line. One is to use coding to dive 10,000 meters to Fishman Island and enter through the gap in the red line. This is the method chosen by most pirates. The other is to submit an application to the world government, which provides the safest route for travel, but this generally only applies to the Shichibukai. But now, there seems to be a third method, relying on personal ability to climb the red line barehanded and reach the New World. The facts were exactly as they had stated. Roxio arrived at the foot of the red line, looking up at the colossal earth towering into the clouds. The first method to enter the new world was too troublesome, and the second was inapplicable. Standing from Roxio's perspective, neither was suitable, relying on himself was simpler. His arms gripped the earth wall, the talisman's power activated, and he kicked off forcefully. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from everyone's sight. The pirates who had followed to watch the spectacle were all dumbfounded by this bizarre sight. Roxio really went to the new world. The sea is about to see another major event. Chapter 73, Red Hair Pirates. New World. Red Hair Pirates. The Fortune, built from the treasure tree atom, sailed on the sea. On the deck, red-haired Shanks and Hawkeye sat opposite each other, drinking cup after cup. Enjoying this last moment together. Gulp, gulp. Hawkeye picked up a wineglass, drained it, wiped his mouth, and savored the lingering taste on his tongue. Shanks. This wine, like your swordsmanship, is truly unforgettable. Red Hair smiled. I've been to all the seas of the world, and there's nothing that can surpass wine brewed with water that has permeated the skin with care. As he spoke, he looked down at his reflection in the wineglass. This is the wine from my hometown. Wine from West Blue. Hawkeye murmured. The taste of home was indeed nostalgic. Then, he poured himself another glass. One more drink. Next time we meet, I won't hold back. Hawkeye joked, a rare occurrence. He came to the Red Hair Pirates specifically to spar with Shanks, although their last encounter was interrupted by Roxio's matter. But this didn't affect his assessment of Red Hair's swordsmanship, still sharp. However, even though it was quite good here, he still preferred to be alone, free and unconstrained. He was ready to leave. Ha ha ha. You're always welcome. Red Hair raised his wineglass and replied with a smile. Red Hair greatly admired strong individuals like Hawkeye, who were rare opponents on the sea. If it weren't for Hawkeye's habitually reclusive nature and preference for solitude, Red Hair would have wanted to invite him to be a crew member. It's just a pity I couldn't fight Roxio. That's a regret. Hawkeye's cross-shaped sword on his neck swayed slightly as he sighed with emotion. Although he was interrupted by Roxio's matter last time, it also sparked some interest in Roxio. He had originally planned to stay with the Red Hair Pirates for a few more days, waiting for news of Roxio before going to meet this so-called strongest rookie. Unexpectedly, when he heard the news again, Roxio had already been arrested by Marine headquarters. It is indeed a pity. However, can the Marines really catch Roxio? Red Hair raised an eyebrow, asking with interest. Hawkeye's sword-like eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? Red Hair shrugged. I just feel that this news isn't very real. He poured himself another glass and slowly said. According to the description in the newspaper published by Morgans, the president of the news agency, the strength Roxio displayed in his battle with Kizaru had almost no weaknesses. But the latest published content indicated that Roxio couldn't even last half an hour under the combined efforts of two admirals. It's important to know that capturing a powerhouse at the admiral level alive is extremely difficult. It's often harder than killing them, even with two combatants of the same rank. Yet, the fact is, Roxio was simply captured. This inevitably raises some suspicion. Of course, there's also another possibility. Morgan's previous description of Roxio's strength was overly exaggerated, and his true strength wasn't as strong as an admiral's. Something like that. The Marines couldn't possibly fabricate it. They value their reputation the most. That's what they cherish the most. A sharp glint flashed in Hawkeye's eyes. He didn't quite agree with Red Hair's words. The Marines have been able to govern the seas for so many years, and their foundation naturally lies in the powerful forces stationed at Marineford. But more importantly, it's because of the long-standing prestige they've accumulated over the years. The belief in justice held by various nations and ordinary citizens. Because of this prestige and belief, there is a continuous stream of people joining the Marine ranks every year, carrying on the banner of justice from generation to generation. But if Marineford itself deliberately spread such false news, the damage to its own reputation would undoubtedly be immense. It would even be more serious than the rookie pirate Roxiu defeating Admiral Kizaru. One might ask, can a justice organization that even fabricates information for public release still deserve the word justice? However, in Hawkeye's eyes, many of the Marines' unscrupulous actions had no justice to speak of, but at least in the eyes of the public, the Marines were still relatively perfect. Red Hair reached out and placed the wine barrel in front of Hawkeye, saying lightly, "Just a feeling." He didn't elaborate much on this issue. He naturally understood Hawkeye's words. Given that there had been no news of Roxiu on the sea for quite some time now. Perhaps he really was captured, but what he didn't know was news about Roxiu would arrive soon. Thump, thump, thump. On the deck. A flurry of hurried footsteps approached from afar. Yasopp, the sniper of the Red Hair Pirates, stepped onto the deck, holding a photograph. Yasopp. Care for a drink? Red-haired Shanks saw Yasopp approaching, raised his glass, and said with a smile, "Captain, there's news about Roxiu." Yasopp was in no mood for drinking right now. Something big had happened in the first half of the Grand Line. "I already know that. He's been captured by the Marines." Red Hair smiled, indicating that this matter didn't need further informing. He wasn't captured. Roxiu, he reappeared on the Red Line. After receiving the first news of Roxiu, the captain sent people to monitor Roxiu's movements. And sure enough, someone at the Red Line took a photo of Roxiu. Hawkeye and Red Hair heard this. Their expressions changed simultaneously, and their brows furrowed. What did that mean? Yasopp didn't explain, directly handing the photo to Shanks. The latter took it, glancing at it casually, wondering if it was a photo of Roxiu and Impel Down. However, the next moment, the scar on his injured left eye twitched violently. In the photo, there was Roxiu sitting cross-legged on a celestial dragon's ship, and the head of a celestial dragon hanging from the celestial dragon's hoof, as well as images of the world government's direct organization, CP0. Clang! The wine glass in Red Hair's hand shattered directly. An invisible Haushiku instantly emanated, sweeping across the fortune. As the man with the strongest conqueror's haki. The aura he unconsciously released was terrifying enough. What's going on? It seems to be the captain's haki. Is there an enemy attack? Thump, thump, thump. The crew members on the ship felt the sudden anomaly. They immediately emerged from their respective cabins and gathered on the deck. "Captain, what's wrong?" Beckman asked, frowning, with a cigarette in his mouth and a gun in his hand. Yasopp shook his head, indicating there was no attack. Hawkeye, sitting opposite him, also noticed Red Hair's unusual expression. "What's the situation?" Red Hair exhaled a hot breath, calming his emotions. He raised his eyes, looking directly at Hawkeye. "It seems my feeling was correct. Roxiu was indeed not arrested by the Marines." Chapter 74, Tensions Flare. As he spoke, he placed the photo he was holding onto the deck. Mihawk was a bit stunned. What exactly was captured in that photo that made Shanks say something so inexplicable? Filled with suspicion, his sharp gaze swept over the photo. Instantly, a flash of brilliance shot out from his pupils. Even the world's greatest swordsman, who rarely showed emotional fluctuations, couldn't help but twitch. His expression was identical to Shanks's moments earlier. Roxiu wasn't at Marineford, which meant the news released by the Marine was false. Moreover, and most importantly, a celestial dragon, a world noble, had been killed by Roxiu and was swinging from a flagpole. Without a doubt, this was Roxiu publicly humiliating the privileged world nobles and, furthermore, challenging the world government. Things are certainly getting more and more interesting, Mihawk said slowly. This was far more serious than defeating Kizaru. How would the Marine react? Wait. This isn't just about the Marine. The world government is going to start having headaches too. Mihawk calmed his expression. Thinking of this, a slight smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Leaving aside why Roxyu reappeared. The mere act of killing a celestial dragon was not something the Marine alone could suppress. If he wasn't mistaken, Fleet Admiral Sengoku was probably currently on his way to Holy Land Marigios, preparing to face the wrath of the Gorosei. As a pirate, Mihawk was very happy to see such events unfold. Similarly, his recently dismissed interest in Roxio's reappearance surged once more. Roxiu was not arrested by the Marine. This meant he had a chance to fight him again. Thinking of this, Mihawk raised his wine bowl and drank it all in one gulp. I'm going to take a trip around the red line. Shanks slowly stood up, a strange glint flashing in his eyes. He didn't look at Mihawk, but gazed toward the vast sea on the horizon. Someone is coming. Oh. Hearing this, Mihawk raised an eyebrow. Was the Red Hair Pirates always this lively? Someone else was coming to visit just a few days after he arrived? He was very curious who it could be. Another of the four emperors? Or perhaps the right-hand man of one of the four emperors? Besides those individuals, he couldn't think of anyone else qualified to find this location and approach the four emperors' territory. Following Shanks's line of sight, he saw, on the vast sea near the horizon, a black figure was stepping on the waves, approaching the fortune at extreme speed. Just a few breaths later, the black figure had traversed the vast sea from the horizon and arrived before the four emperors' pirate crew. Boom! The black figure burst out from the splashing water and landed firmly on the fortune. The tremendous impact made the entire ship shake violently. The other crew members of the Red Hair Pirates all looked alert. They vigilantly watched the sudden arrival. Once the mist dispersed, a tall, imposing figure came into view. Roxiu. Upon seeing the newcomer's true identity, Mihawk, Shanks, and the crew members all exclaimed the name almost simultaneously. Their tone carried disbelief. They wouldn't have been surprised no matter who the visitor was. But Roxiu was the one person they had never expected. Seeing is believing. Roxiu glanced at the crew members standing on the deck, a slight smile playing on his lips. Click! Almost the instant Roxiu was recognized. The sound of a bullet being chambered rang out. Then Beckman chambered his flintlock rifle, which was crafted from sea stone, and aimed the muzzle at Roxiu. He wasn't the only one. The sniper Yasop also held his sniper rifle, staring warily at the uninvited guest. Lucky Roo, Building Snake, Lime Juice, each of them wore a solemn expression, and a powerful aura slowly spread from their bodies. Although they enjoyed seeing Roxiu cause chaos for the Marine and do things that put the Marine and the world government on edge, that didn't mean they stood in the same camp as Roxiu. Pirates were always in competition with each other. Roxiu, a rookie pirate with the strength of an admiral, was here for unknown reasons. But arriving on their pirate ship in such an extremely impolite manner, without any prior notice of a visit, naturally meant he came with ill intent. Compared to the alertness of his crew, Shanks seemed much calmer and slowly sat down. Roxiu. I've only ever heard your name, and I was hoping to meet you someday. This time, my wish has been granted. This was his honest sentiment. Roxiu came out of the East Blue and managed to grow to this level in such a short period of time. Even Luffy, whom he personally favored, lagged far behind in comparison. I'm here for one purpose only. To challenge you. Roxiu knew he wasn't familiar with Shanks, so he skipped the pleasantries, pointed at Shanks, and stated his purpose directly. To quickly activate his mask and obtain the corresponding leadership value based on his bounty. Challenging a four emperor was undoubtedly the quickest way. As for why he chose Shanks among the four emperors, there was no other reason. It was simply because he was close by. Because the Red Hair Pirates weren't staying in their territory but were wandering everywhere, which fit Shanks's personality. Hey! Are rookie pirates nowadays all this rude? Beckman sneered, a cigar dangling from his mouth. If you want to challenge our captain, you'll have to get past US first, kid. Roxio's strength was indeed formidable, and his actions were enough to make people dumbfounded. But that didn't mean they were afraid. None of the crew members of the Red Hair Pirates was someone to be trifled with. Beckman, as the first mate, was the cream of the crop, with strength second only to Shanks. However, before Roxio could reply, a sharp sword aura suddenly erupted at that moment. Mihawk, who had been watching from the side, was already itching for action. "You, are that Roxio?" "Dracule Mihawk." Roxio frowned. "What happens here is none of your business." Although he didn't know why Mihawk was here, Roxio wasn't interested. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Mihawk didn't think so, his sharp eyes fixed intently on Roxio. With just one look, his fighting spirit was completely roused. The black blade Yoro on his back vibrated slightly. His fighting intent surged, as if it were excited to have encountered such a formidable opponent. If before meeting Roxio, Mihawk had only wanted to fight him, now that he saw Roxio, he couldn't wait to test what kind of rookie could defeat Kizaru. And whether he truly was, as the newspapers claimed, virtually without weakness. Roxio felt the fighting spirit emanating from Mihawk? This Mihawk was truly looking for trouble. And he had impeccable timing. Was he deliberately trying to mess up his plans? Get lost. Standing at the bow, menacing face, Roxio swept his cold gaze over Mihawk, showing no politeness. If defeating Mihawk didn't provide zero benefit, he would have already blasted him with a punch. Ask my sword first. Chapter 75, Roxio vs. Red Hair. Facing Roxio, Hawkeye did not choose to use the small cross sword on his chest, unlike when dealing with challengers in the past. Instead, he directly drew the black blade Yoro from his back. Because those challengers were simply not worthy of him drawing the black blade. As for Roxio, the strongest newcomer whose reputation spread across the 4 seas in just a few months, he was worthy of his full strength. As he finished speaking, the imposing aura around Hawkeye suddenly surged. The black blade slashed out. Waves surged everywhere. The sea swept up enormous waves. The Fortune, built from the treasure tree atom, shook violently on the sea like a lone boat. A terrifying crescent slash cut out, slicing through the air and tearing the space in front of Roxio. Carrying infinite power, it slashed down fiercely. Buzz! 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 Roxio's expression darkened. This guy was being a bit too reckless. The talisman's magic power instantly activated. A massive fireball blasted out from his palm. In the blink of an eye, the exploding flame collided with the sword energy. Boom! A deafening sound rang out. Flames scattered, and sword energy surged. The surrounding air seemed to instantly increase in temperature. Fine mist drifted over the sea surface. The aftershock of the blast vibrated across the sea surface, stirring up waves dozens of meters high that surged overwhelmingly toward the Fortune. Whoosh! 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 The crew members of the Red Hair Pirates disappeared from their spots, leaping into the air to block the giant waves crashing toward the ship. And at the same time, the exploding flame and sword energy collided. Roxio's figure flashed where he stood. Stepping through the sound of bursting tears, he arrived next to Hawkeye in an instant. He smashed down with a punch. The latter's eyes narrowed. The arm holding the black blade lifted to block his chest. Clang! Accompanied by the ringing sound of metal clashing. Roxio's fist pressed against the body of the black blade Yoru. White energy waves shot out from the center point in all directions, like white sharp blades slashing outward. If the Fortune hadn't been built from the treasure tree atom, it would have been shaken apart by now. A simple exchange between the world's greatest swordsman and an admiral-level combatant. Just the aftermath was enough to destroy everything. Such speed! Hawkeye looked at Roxio in front of him, his heart slightly stirred. To be able to arrive next to him the moment he made a move. With this speed, it wasn't surprising that he managed to injure Admiral Kizaru. The black blade in his hand flipped. However, just as he was about to launch his next attack, Red Hair's figure suddenly landed between Hawkeye and Roxio. I ask both of you to give me some face. Powerful haki unfolded, blowing in all directions. If you keep fighting, this ship won't be able to handle it. Hearing this, Hawkeye stopped, not wanting to embarrass Shanks, but his eyes remained fixed on Roxio. Roxio also withdrew his punch. He was already reluctant to get entangled with my hawk. Red-haired Shanks rested his arm on the griffin at his waist, glanced at Roxio, and said with interest, "Let's go to a nearby island, the latter half of the Grand Line." The New World. On a desolate island. In the center of the island, Roxio and four Emperors Red Hair stood facing each other, separated by tens of meters. Beside the island stood Hawkeye and the crew members of the Red Hair Pirates, closely watching the battle about to unfold between the two. Especially the crew members of the Red Hair Pirates. Their eyes were burning with curiosity, somewhat failing to understand why the captain would agree to Roxio's request. After all, Roxio's identity was just that of a pirate newcomer. Although this newcomer was stronger than many veterans, but his status was what it was. A four-emperor fighting a pirate newcomer, such an outrageous event would be explosive anywhere. It was truly beneath his dignity. Hawkeye, however, could somewhat understand Red Hair's actions. This was an unspoken understanding between peak powerhouses. Just like how he traveled thousands of miles specifically to fight Shanks. He only regretted not being able to continue fighting Roxio. However, getting to watch Shanks, who rarely makes a move, fight, seemed to lessen the regret. After all, Hawkeye couldn't confidently claim victory over Shanks in swordsmanship alone. From the fight between Shanks and Roxio, Hawkeye could roughly deduce what level his own fight with Roxio would reach. And having the same thought as Hawkeye was Vice Emperor Beckman, who he held a cigar between his fingers and exhaled a puff of smoke. The rifle previously aimed at Roxio was tucked into his waist. No one would be allowed to interfere in the captain's battle, regardless of the outcome, so firearms were unnecessary. "It seems the captain regards Roxio highly," he said slowly. If the captain admired someone, the distance between their statuses was virtually zero. Hawkeye glanced at him, naturally understanding what he meant. "Compared to that, I'm more curious about the outcome. My hawk. Is there really a need to be curious about this?" Beckman smiled upon hearing Hawkeye's words, feeling non-committal. It was true that Roxio was very strong, but he didn't believe he could be compared to the captain. Even though he injured Admiral Kizaru. The other crew members shared the same opinion. With the captain's strength, even if an admiral-level combatant stood here, there would only be one outcome. Beckman continued, "It's better to see how long Roxio can last." "Is that really so?" Hawkeye leaned against a tree, a faint light flashing in his eyes. Their brief exchange just now had already offered a glimpse of the truth. Although neither side used their full strength, it was still clear that Morgan's description of Roxio in the newspaper contained no exaggeration. Naturally, he believed Shanks was stronger. But he still felt a sense of unease. It has begun. Hawkeye looked toward the center of the island, frowning. On the island, the auras of the two men were steadily rising. A murderous aura, ready to explode at any moment. Buzz. 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 The humming sound of a sword blade rang out. Shanks drew the griffin from his waist, held the sword single-handedly, looked straight at Roxio across the space, and the corner of his mouth slightly lifted. "Roxio. The strongest newcomer. I wonder if your strength truly matches the rumors, like a monster." "You'll know soon enough." Roxio met Shanks' gaze and said slowly. "But fists and feet have no eyes, they won't show you any mercy." Red Hair smiled. He suddenly found Roxio quite interesting. But the next moment, a glint flashed in his eyes. Roxio wanted to challenge him, but why wouldn't he want to see if this strongest pirate newcomer was truly worthy of the title of Fifth Emperor? Swish! The long sword in Shanks' hand was raised high. The black windbreaker on his body fluttered without wind. although he only had one arm, he erupted with a powerful aura. Dust formed a circle around him, slowly rising. In the next instant, he slashed through the void with one hand, and a fierce sword wave wrapped in black sword energy pierced the sky, shooting directly toward Roxio. Good speed! Roxio's expression hardened, and the corner of his mouth curled up. As soon as his voice fell, he fiercely tapped the ground with his toe. Transforming into a black lightning bolt, he closed the distance between them. In the blink of an eye, he arrived next to Shanks. His hands, one high and one low, targeted Shanks' kidney area and neck, attacking his weak points first. Shanks' eyes flashed, seeing Roxio's intent. He didn't dodge or evade, slashing the griffin in his hand toward his side. Another burst of sword energy shot out, ripping through the air, blocking Roxio's attack. Chapter 76, An Overestimating Fool. Roxio's expression subtly shifted, his eyes burning as he looked at the sword energy right before him. The next moment, his body, using his waist as the pivot point, twisted at an uncanny angle in midair, avoiding the attack wrapped in black energy waves, and landed behind Shanks. With a cold expression, he smashed down another punch. Clang! Shanks raised the griffin and used it to block behind him. The immense force transmitted through the sword made his arm tremble. Decent power. Shanks's mouth curled slightly upwards. He flipped his wrist and fiercely flicked the sword upward. The sound of the sword ringing resonated, Roxio's blocked fist was knocked away, and his body was flung to the side. However, this was only the beginning. Just as his toes touched the ground, the magic power of the dragon talisman was triggered. Torrential power surged through his limbs and bones, finally converging in his arm, and then transmitting into his palm. A giant fireball blasted out from the center of his palm. Roxio, having integrated the power of the origin, could do more than just spit out explosive flames from his mouth. And the moment the fireball was activated, the surrounding air seemed to distort, and an intense heat immediately rose. Carrying immense might, it shot forward. Its speed was no slower than a cannonball leaving the barrel. Shanks's scarred left eye narrowed slightly, and his heart stirred. So this is your special ability. He had witnessed the power of the fireball earlier on the ship. Mihawk's sword energy was directly cancelled out, showing that its energy was powerful enough. Moreover, the flame before him was much fiercer than the one used against Mihawk. He could not take this lightly. Thinking of this, his aura sank. The next moment, with a whoosh, rushing energy waves appeared beside him. The griffin in his hand was instantly enveloped by the energy waves, appearing as if boundless raging flames were attached to the blade. A terrifying aura continuously emanated from this blade that had accompanied him through years of battle. The sun hung high in the sky, casting light upon it, yet the light seemed much dimmer, as if being absorbed. Surrounded by black energy waves, a crescent-shaped sword energy soared into the sky. The sword energy swiftly sliced across the sky, kicking up shattered stones from the ground, and shot straight toward the oncoming fireball. Even the air carried a degree of sharpness and awe-inspiring hockey. Boom! 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 The small island on the sea surface trembled slightly, and a huge ravine started in front of Shanks and extended to the middle of the island, until it made contact with the explosive flame. The next instant, only a thunderous crash was heard. The sword energy, seemingly capable of cutting through everything, collided with the explosive flame. The air froze, and even the void seemed to slightly crack. The two terrifying attacks erupted over the small island. The terrifying aftershock swept out. Layers of energy rings exploded, like circular arc blades slashing outwards, causing bursts of cracking sounds wherever they passed. On the island, areas swept by the energy waves were left desolate, stones, trees, and grass were annihilated under the baptism of violent energy. The surrounding temperature sharply increased, and the air carried a faint scent of scorching. And it wasn't just the things on the island that were affected. Outside the small island, layers of surging sea waves violently spread outwards. Scorched by the high temperature, scalding steam instantly formed, misting over the water surface. Such powerful strength. Dracul Mihawk's eyes revealed a hint of astonishment. Stabilizing his posture, his breathing quickened considerably. That explosive flame just now was much stronger than the one he faced previously. Roxiu's strength seems to be beyond expectation. The fierce explosions and deafening roars on the island attracted the attention of some pirates outside this sea area. Pirate ship after pirate ship rapidly sailed in, drawn by the commotion. Pairs of eyes scanned the people on the island. These guys are actually fighting so brazenly here, aren't they afraid of attracting the Marines? Ha ha ha. Pirates in the New World are just this arrogant. When the snipe and clam fight, the fisherman profits, he he he. This is an opportunity. Look at those people standing on the side, they're so stupid, don't they know? To go help? Thud. Suddenly. A man whose bounty reached 100 million, seemingly the captain of a pirate ship, kicked away the rookie pirate who had just spoken up to mock them. His expression was ice cold as he sternly reprimanded the group of subordinates behind him. That is the Four Emperors. Shanks's pirate crew. If any of you aren't afraid of death, keep going. After speaking, he glanced at Ben Beckman and the others, his eyes full of apology, sweat pouring from his forehead. Only when he saw that Ben Beckman and the others made no move and didn't even bother to look at them did he finally exhale. The stone in his heart finally dropped. These idiots. They didn't even recognize the red hair pirates, truly believing that becoming a pirate and reaching the New World meant they could be endlessly arrogant. They clearly didn't think they were dying fast enough. As a great pirate who hadn't been in the New World long, he had already gathered most of the information about this place back on the Grand Line. He knew deeply that the power gap between them and the Four Emperors was more than just one leap. They might all be finished here with just a single glance imbued with hockey from the opponent. Hiss! The sound of gasps constantly rang out on the pirate ship. Every pirate, upon hearing that this was the legendary Four Emperors crew, couldn't help but feel a wave of fear, their legs trembling uncontrollably. They threw grateful glances toward the great pirate who had kindly warned them. Just now, they had almost spoken disrespectfully. If they angered the other side, any random person could wipe them out. However, after the shock of the red hair pirates subsided, these pirates became filled with curiosity about the figure currently confronting Shanks. Who is that person confronting Shanks? To dare stand before a Four Emperor, he truly isn't afraid of death, humph. I think this guy is just an overestimating rookie who thinks he's someone important just because he came to the New World. The pirate who had just been kicked away climbed up from the ground and once again made a vicious mocking remark. When he learned that the people he had just been badmouthing belonged to a Four Emperor crew, his heart nearly jumped into his throat. Now, seeing someone blocking the Four Emperor, he naturally wanted to compensate for his previous mistake by mocking the person opposite, to make himself seem smarter and wittier. However, just as he was happily running his mouth, the great pirate with a 100 million bounty, who had seen the world, stared intently at Roxiu. His breathing slowly grew heavier, and his pupils constricted. That appearance, that attire, that figure, it's that man. Damn thing. With a clang, he immediately drew the sword from his waist and slashed the pirate who was mocking Roxiu. Blood splattered, sprinkling into the seawater. The head rolled across the deck and barely came to a stop. Amidst the shocked, incomprehending gazes of the crowd, the great pirate spoke with difficulty, filled with endless fear. This man. He is Roxiu. Chapter 77, The Terrifying Combat Power of a Four Emperor. Silence. A deathly silence. Upon hearing that name, all the pirates present couldn't help but hold their breath. Then, their gazes turned to the man who had been beheaded on the spot, and the confusion in their eyes vanished completely. Some even spat at him. He deserved to die. Who was Roxiu? However, just then, a pirate among the crowd suddenly asked, as if the name sounded somewhat familiar, but mostly strange. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The pirates all looked at him in unison, their eyes twitching. Their expressions seemed to say, "Where did this idiot come from?" It's understandable if someone just arrived in the New World and doesn't know the red hair pirates, but to come from the Grand Line and not even know Roxia's name, what kind of person must that be? The pirate being stared at felt a chill run down his spine. I really don't know," he said weakly. "A great pirate with a bounty of 100 million, his figure filled with disbelief, slowly said, he defeated Marine Admiral Kizaru. And most importantly, Marineford is going to publicly execute him in 10 days. But he's here, on the other side. On the island." Roxia's deep eyes lifted, piercing through the rolling smoke and dust, directly looking at red-haired Shanks. So this is a emperor. His strength is truly impressive. In the original work, Shanks rarely made a move, making it difficult to judge his specific performance based on actual combat records. Aside from using his face fruit in the Marineford War to quell the heroes, it seemed, he rarely truly went all out. But Roxio could tell from the simple probing just now that the opponent's strength was definitely greater than an admiral's. Those who can stand at the pinnacle of power are indeed extraordinary. At the same time, red-haired Shanks was also shocked by Roxio's strength. That previous strike had already imbued Haki into the blade. The sword energy unleashed was much stronger than ordinary slashes. But it was still blocked by that strange flame. This is getting more and more interesting. His interest in Roxio grew even stronger. The next moment, Shanks's eyes twitched slightly, and his aura surged again. His empty sleeve flapped in the wind. Boom, he lightly stomped the ground, and the earth cracked. With astonishing speed, he left an afterimage in his original position. Layers of airwaves spread outwards. He shot out like a thrown shot put. This time, he chose to attack proactively. Seeing this, Roxia slightly bent one knee, his arm swelled, and his bulging muscles were gnarled and ferocious, as if a primeval beast within his body was about to crawl out. A black lightning bolt appeared on the island. It directly clashed with Shanks, who was charging forward with his sword. Clang, clang, clang. Thump, thump. Thump. Shanks and Roxio. The two figures, two powerhouses standing among the world's peak, continuously collided on the island. Violent energy constantly poured out from the collision point. Where it landed on the ground, there was a loud bang and a crater. Dirt and rocks flew, and dust rose. Only two black figures clashed, then separated, then clashed again. The vibrating battle might cause the sea level around them to sink. Layers of ripples continuously surged. Waves surged mightily. Every collision would cause a huge aftershock, stirring up towering air currents. A sharp aura permeated every corner. Small animals on the island were frightened and hid in their holes, trembling. Even some sea kings in the ocean retreated to the deep sea, not daring to show their faces. Fearing an undeserved calamity. Countless pirates were immersed in this terrifying atmosphere. This is a emperor. Too powerful. Roxio, the new pirate who defeated Admiral Kizaru. It's terrifying, this power could even sink the island. Rumble. Suddenly, the two had another fierce collision. Under the surging energy, the seawater formed giant waves dozens of meters high, sweeping fiercely towards the outside of the island with irresistible force. All the pirates were stunned. Then, someone, trembling, shouted, "Run!" As soon as he spoke. The pirates, who had originally wanted to watch the battle between the two and gain some combat experience, immediately scattered and fled. The helmsmen sharply turned their rudders. Giant waves dozens of meters high. Even if they were top performers in the first half of the Grand Line, they couldn't withstand such an impact. Just the aftershocks of their battle could trigger colossal waves that could overturn mountains and seas. Too terrifying. Such powerful strength had completely transcended their understanding. They didn't even need to lift a finger. Just the residual power of their battle could annihilate them. Not just them. The crew members of the Red Hair Pirates also used their abilities to block the continuously spreading might. Beckman used Haki to isolate the surging energy, and his cigar, held in his mouth, trembled under the fierce wind. His gaze was fervent as he looked at the center of the island. Reflected in his eyes was a black lightning bolt. To be able to contend with the captain for so long, this is truly surprising. Beckman couldn't help but sigh inwardly. If before, his opinion of Roxiu was merely that of a strong but not very threatening young punk. Now, it was different. He knew the captain's strength all too well, and Roxiu's ability to last this long was proof enough. Compared to Beckman's thoughts, Hawkeye's heart was even more shaken at this moment. The black blade on his back was even vibrating slightly. It seemed to have been roused by the fierce battle. The next moment. Clang! Hawkeye drew his black blade Yoru. He held the blade horizontally in front of him, then swung it fiercely. A huge purple sword energy shot out from the blade. Carrying immense power, it directly confronted the surging waves. The rolling waves were instantly cut in half. When the pirates who were fleeing saw the incoming waves cut, their eyes suddenly trembled. What strong sword energy, it's the world's strongest swordsman. Dracul Mihawk. When they recognized the person who made the move, they couldn't help but gasp. Their eyes were filled with horror. They couldn't quite understand. What was going on? Besides the red hair pirates and Roxiu, even the world's strongest swordsman was here. The pirates were in disarray. What kind of day was today, that they got to see so many pirates whose strength was comparable to an admiral? Could it be, he's also here for Roxiu? This thought emerged in their minds, leaving them deeply shocked. Dracul Mihawk paid no attention to the pirates' words. Too lazy to bother. His gaze remained fixed on Roxiu. He had only made a move just now because watching the two battle made his hands itch. However, just then, Beckman suddenly exhaled a puff of smoke, a glint flashing in his eyes. He stared intently at the captain. It's coming. Chapter 78, Top-Tier Conquerors Hockey. On the island. After a fierce crash, two black figures separated, landing on opposite sides. At this moment, neither of them looked to be in good condition. The intense collisions and the extremely high frequency of attacks had severely drained their stamina. At this moment, Roxius stood on a burnt giant tree. His clothes were tattered, revealing his bronze skin, which was stained with blood, and his limbs and body surface bore injuries of varying degrees. But under the magic of the horse talisman, the wounds were slowly healing. Although Shanks had no obvious injuries, his breathing was still erratic and his expression was somewhat fatigued after clashing with Roxiu. What a troublesome guy! Roxiu shook his head, looking at Red Hair with deep eyes, muttering to himself. Although Shanks is not a devil fruit ability user, dealing with him is no easier than facing an ability user. The haki surrounding Griffin caused more damage than Kizaru's Ama no Murakumo sword. Moreover, if you were locked onto, it was difficult to avoid. If Roxiu hadn't been fast enough and his self-healing ability strong enough, he would likely have been severely injured already. While Roxiu was amazed by how troublesome Shanks was, Red Hair felt the same way. At this moment, Shanks, gripping Griffin with one hand, was breathing much more rapidly than when they started. The red hair covering his forehead was damp with sweat. Self-healing ability. Speed comparable to Kizaru. And explosive flames. The things reported in the newspapers were being verified one by one on Roxiu. Moreover, every single ability had reached the peak. You must understand that mastering just one of these abilities is enough to join the ranks of the strong. But when they are all gathered in one person, that person is not just strong, but a monster. Roxiu. To be honest, I really admire you. Because you remind me of someone. Red Hair adjusted his breathing, not rushing to attack, but looking at Roxiu as he spoke. Roxiu slightly curled his lip, trying to butter me up won't work. Red-haired Shanks smiled calmly. You remind me of someone. Do you know Roger? As Red Hair spoke the name, his expression shifted, and his memory seemed to flash back to his youthful days. Back then, he was just an apprentice on the Roger Pirates. He had witnessed his captain's terrifying strength and his boundless arrogance. He faced every opponent with the courage to forge ahead and defeat everything, even the legendary rocks. That supremely confident aura was somewhat similar to the young man standing before him now. The members of the Red Hair Pirates couldn't help but take a deep look at Roxiu when they heard their captain mention Roger. They knew perfectly well that Roger, as their captain's former boss, was always the person he respected the most. No newcomer had ever been granted the honor of being compared to Roger. However, this was just Red Hair's personal opinion. For Roxiu, such an evaluation was nothing to be proud of. Just a failure. Does he deserve to be compared to me? Roxiu said coldly. Ha ha ha. Red Hair didn't get angry at Roxiu's words, instead, he burst out laughing. If Roxiu had agreed with him, he wouldn't have deserved the previous praise. A man like Roger is naturally one of a kind. Brat! You're arrogant enough. However, just talking big is useless. Red Hair said deeply. The next moment, his expression became extremely solemn. An extremely powerful aura erupted from his body. A wave of power swept out, rushing straight into the sky. Da! Red-haired Shanks raised his foot and took a step forward. The sound was crisp, hitting the ground. At the same time, a black surge of power appeared in the sky. The clouds gathered there seemed to be affected by something, slowly rotating toward the center. Boom! On the small island, there was even a sound like thunder. The color of the sky changed. What's going on? The sky, it suddenly feels darker. I don't know. Is it going to rain? The pirates who had stopped halfway through their escape looked at the terrifying scene on the island and started discussing it. Beckman, the vice-emperor of the Red Hair Pirates, threw the cigar in his hand onto the ground, glanced at the pirates, and said coldly, "Those who aren't afraid of death, scram now. Your bodies won't be able to handle it." Hearing this, the pirates were stunned. Before they could figure out what he meant, they heard the sound of did-did-dee again. Red-haired Shanks, holding his sword in one hand, walked forward step by step. With every step he took, the dense haki in the space intensified. And at this moment, that great pirate, whose bounty exceeded 100 million, suddenly seemed to realize something and shouted back at the other pirates. It's Conqueror's haki. Run! Don't!" Just as he spoke, an ordinary pirate behind him suddenly rolled his eyes, foamed at the mouth, lost consciousness, and crashed onto the deck. Seeing this scene, his eyes widened abruptly, and sweat poured down his forehead. Is this the Conqueror's haki of the Four Emperors, Red Hair? It's so powerful even from this distance. Don't! The next moment, the great pirate, enduring immense pressure from above, also had his knees buckle and fell to the ground. The great sword in his hand was jammed into the deck. He was struggling to resist. Da! Da! The steady footsteps grew heavier and heavier. With every step Shanks took, a pirate would roll their eyes, lose consciousness, and faint. For a moment, the minor pirates on the deck were trembling, watching their comrades faint one after another in terror, their voices shaking. What incredible haki! It's still the same as before. Hawkeye repositioned the black blade behind his back, muttering. Obviously, he was not within the range of the haki's influence. But that didn't stop him from marveling at the strength of Red Hair's haki. You must know that Conqueror's haki is something only 1 in a million possesses. Even he doesn't have it. Those who can cultivate Conqueror's haki to this level are extremely rare. Compared to the others who were some distance from the center, the pressure Roxia felt was the greatest. The top-tier Conqueror's haki, once released, acted on him like a tangible force of 10,000 jin, crushing him downward relentlessly. Crack! The giant tree Roxia was standing on was shattered, and the gravel on the ground was pulverized into dust. His clothes, already ripped to shreds, gained several more tears. As expected of the man who cultivated Conqueror's haki to the extreme. It can even cause physical damage now, Roxiu muttered. Throughout the entire sea, if anyone's Conqueror's haki is the strongest, it must be red-haired Shanks. Even Roxio couldn't help but sigh in admiration when facing such ultimate hockey. But it was only admiration. The next moment, Roxio exhaled a hot breath, and the aura around him surged violently. A similar aura, centered on Roxio, swept out in all directions. The sky changed color once again. Roxio's Conqueror's Haki charged towards Red Hair's Haki. Rumble. The two streams of Haki collided in the sky, and lightning snaked through the air like swimming serpents. Chapter 79, Conqueror's Haki Coating. Unrivaled momentum. The clouds in the sky were torn apart, and a violent aura pressed down. The animals on the island fainted under the clash of the two streams of Haki. So it's Conqueror's Haki. Interesting. Red Hair murmured to himself, looking at the Haki Roxio displayed. He wasn't surprised by this. It would be strange if a fearless, dazzling kid like Roxio hadn't awakened Conqueror's Haki. However, this level of Haki still has a distance to go before reaching the peak. In front of him, it wasn't enough to be worth mentioning. Boom! Red Hair's Haki climbed yet another height. At the same time, red lightning struck down from the sky. It was mixed within the black energy surge. The black and red mix looked quite bizarre. Whoosh! The black aura surrounding Griffin, held by red-haired Shanks, changed color, becoming layered with red. A terrifying aura blossomed from the long sword. A move that only top-tier Conqueror's Haki users can master. Haki emission. It is also called Conqueror's Haki Coating. This is Conqueror's Haki Coating, right? Roxio recognized it instantly. What Shanks was using right now was the Conqueror's Haki Coating, which surpasses everything in the pirate world. Its striking power is even stronger than armament Haki. Those who can cultivate to this level, only a handful can be found across the entire sea. But Roxio was not flustered. With the horse talisman on him, he understood clearly. What doesn't kill him will only make him stronger. Being able to personally learn from a top-tier Haki user would undoubtedly lead to enormous self-improvement. Buzz buzz buzz, the griffin in Red Hair's hand was emitting a violent tremor. The battle was imminent. The anxious atmosphere seemed to solidify. The clouds in the sky shook, and on the sea surface, fish corpses continually floated up, belly up. Roxio! It's time to end this. A sharp light flashed in Red Hair's scarred eye. The next moment, his pupils constricted. Powerful Haki swept forth. Before he even struck, cracks instantly appeared in the ground. Thud! Red Hair leaped into the air. Swish swish swish! As his arm swung, Griffin was like an endless divine weapon. From top to bottom, 3 continuous arcs of red and black sword energy, faster and stronger than before, shot out. The speed increased rapidly. Under everyone's gaze, continuous lightning bolts crashed down from the sky, accompanied by the 3 terrifying streams of sword energy. In less than the blink of an eye, the sword energy sliced through space. Every stream of sword energy carried a terrifying might capable of slicing mountains. Wherever the sword energy passed, space slightly warped, and the void seemed to shatter. Its sharpness was enough to cut through everything. Captain is getting serious. Hiss, this is the first time I've seen Captain so serious. There's no suspense this time, right? The crew members of the Red Hair Pirates widened their eyes slightly. Having said that, all of them turned their gazes toward Roxio. In the battlefield, the red and black sword energy, wrapped in an overwhelming pressure, rushed toward him. So this is red-haired Shanks, the guy who has steadily held the position of one of the 4 emperors. Roxio narrowed his eyes. In this strike, he smelled danger. Perhaps he would be injured, but the destructive sword energy was about to hit. The muscles on his body twitched uncontrollably. However, he wasn't afraid. Quite the opposite. At this moment, Roxio only felt surging ambition in his chest. To challenge a 4 emperor. He had prepared himself to face a strong opponent. It meant he possessed the courage to fight a true powerhouse. Because only through this could he quickly increase his strength and make his journey to this world worthwhile. If he merely lived in hiding, he could certainly pass the time slowly. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to improve his strength, ascend to the peak of power, surpass everything, and compete with the powerhouses of this era. Until he defeated everything. Only then would he truly be qualified to roam freely in this world. Otherwise, he would be restricted everywhere. Killing pirates. Striking down a branch colonel. Leaving the East Blue. Defeating the Shichibukai crocodile. Injuring Admiral Kizaru. These were all testimonies of his passion. And at this moment, facing the conqueror's haki coating of one of the four emperors, Roxio's fighting spirit was fully ignited. His pulsating muscles were craving battle. The sword energy, imbued with haki, had already arrived. But Roxio not only didn't retreat, he took another step forward. His deep eyes shone like electricity. He shouted in a low voice. "Then let's fight." Boom! Explosive flames continuously erupted from his body. It was like an endless sea of blazing fire appearing, covering the sky and earth, intending to burn everything to ashes. At the same time, Roxio suddenly punched forward. A penetrating force instantly transferred from his spine to his right fist, which he then violently swung out. The fist, shrouded in explosive flames, collided with the first stream of sword energy. A loud crack echoed. The haki wrapped around the sharp sword energy drilled into Roxio's arm like maggots clinging to bone. His heavily muscled arm was instantly covered in wounds. Blood dripped profusely. However, Roxio showed no intention of stopping. The power of the ox talisman flowed from his limbs and bones into his knuckles. The force was like a mountain smashing down. A loud crack sounded. The sharp sword energy was forcefully shattered. Roxio's conqueror's haki swept out once more. Suddenly, wild winds surged. The earth and stones beneath his feet cracked inch by inch. The surging impact ruthlessly ripped apart the hard ground. A powerful wind pressure swept the surroundings. Even Hawkeye, Beckman, and the others couldn't help but unleash their haki to block. But Roxio, who was at the center, stood completely still. He was like a giant connecting heaven and earth. His colossal physique drew all eyes. In the distance, Red Hair, who had landed lightly on the ground, looked shaken. Using only physical strength to withstand sword energy head-on. That really is uncomfortable to witness. Though he spoke of discomfort, his tone was clearly filled with shock. His Red Hair's eyebrows suddenly twitched. His conqueror's haki actually improved. He looked at the unrivaled haki surrounding Roxio, and his pupils shook again. If Roxio's initial display of Conqueror's haki had only touched the threshold of the intermediate level, then his haki now had completely progressed to the intermediate level, and even showed momentum toward leaping to the advanced level. Red Hair knew that haki could advance during battle if one possessed an unstoppable momentum. But taking such a massive step forward directly was extremely rare. He couldn't help but wonder internally. Roxio, what kind of invincible momentum was he carrying? What could sustain such rapid progress? Or rather, what exactly was this world to Roxio? Beneath the violent, sharp haki, was it possible that what was hidden was the tyranny of wanting to stand at the world's apex, overturning this entire world? Red Hair felt a chill run up his feet. This must not be allowed. Naturally, Roxio could not hear Shanks's words, nor did he know his thoughts at the moment. Explosive flames detonated, weakening the incoming sword energy. He just kept punching. Punching again. Both fists swung rapidly, creating afterimages. In the blink of an eye, the sword energy was blasted into fragments. Explosion after explosion. Chapter 80, Inheriting Roger's Martial Arts. Divine Avoidance. Roxio's arms were already riddled with holes. They were covered in blood. The sword energy was sharp and fierce. The sword energy, wrapped in Conqueror's haki, was even more terrifying. Zila, a gash split open between the knuckles of Roxiu's right fist, spattering thick, crimson blood beads. Precisely, they landed right on Roxiu's lips. Roxiu pursed his lips. A metallic, rusty taste quickly spread across his taste buds. Buzz. The air currents slowly subsided into calmness. From start to finish, Roxiu did not even blink. Given his self-healing ability, these injuries were nothing significant. The speed of his fists did not decrease, and he continued to strike forward fiercely. The last streak of sword energy shattered under Roxiu's explosive punch. Countless air blades scattered outward. A storm gathered, and a small vortex was forcefully whipped up in the center by the wind of his punch. Break open! Roxiu roared loudly. He gathered power in his right fist, using his body as an axis, and swung out his strongest attack. Zila! The sleeve on Roxiu's arm was instantly torn to shreds, the ground beneath his feet cracked again, and the spiral air currents at the center of the storm rotated inward. Kacha! Spiderweb-like cracks appeared in the space at the deepest part of the cyclone. This single punch. It shook the heavens and the earth, unleashing a terrifying, jaw-dropping force. There was no room for resistance. The sword energy, coated with Conqueror's haki, was violently blasted apart. The wind stopped. Roxiu exhaled a hot breath. The fresh blood from his arm dripped onto the ground, forming beads of blood. His figure stood tall and proud. Hiss! Is this what a true powerhouse is like? That's terrifying. That boundless sword energy could split an island in half. Yet, Roxiu actually withstood it. Is Roxiu's combat power really stronger than a Four-Emperor? To shatter sword energy with bare fists. That is absolutely terrifying. The pirates who managed to stay standing all had fervent looks in their eyes. They marveled at the astonishing power of Red Hair's swordsmanship, but simultaneously praised Roxiu's might. Without exception, they were captivated by this spectacular battle. They even temporarily forgot to flee. What a monster! Hawkeye was equally shaken. Shanks's haki-coating move, he could also handle. But to do as Roxiu did, directly use his fists, punch by punch, to disperse it, truthfully, he could not. It was impossible for him to do. Anyone capable of doing all this is simply a monster. Their physical constitution is outrageously strong. Unconsciously, Dracul Mihawk imagined himself in Red Hair's position. He wondered what the result would be if he were standing opposite Roxiu and unleashed that fierce sword strike. Without a doubt, the outcome would be no different from the current one. He would still be blasted apart by Roxiu. Thinking of this, his heart involuntarily tightened. His gaze became even sharper. He did not feel disappointed by this, instead, he felt more fervent, his battle intent stirring restlessly. After all, only such an opponent was worth fighting with full effort. I take back what I said earlier. He truly has the qualifications to challenge the captain. Vice Emperor Beckman said slowly after a long period of contemplation. He really didn't want to admit it, but Roxiu's strength had genuinely astonished him. His hand rested on the flintlock pistol at his waist. Beckman ultimately did not draw it. For a moment, he was genuinely afraid that the captain might get hurt. This feeling, after following the captain across the seas for many years, hadn't surfaced in a long time. However, this should be the end of it. If I'm not mistaken, the captain should be using that move now. Beckman sighed and said. Hearing this, Yasup, Gabu, and the others all nodded. Roxiu was formidable. Stronger than anyone had anticipated. But even now, they did not believe Roxiu would truly defeat the captain. This was the confidence they had gained from following the captain over the years. At the center of the island, 3 streaks of sword energy had been shattered. Potholes and broken trees were everywhere. The originally beautiful small island had long since become a desolate mess. Roxyu and Red Hair stood facing each other. Roxyu, you are truly strong. And you constantly manage to exceed my expectations. Red-haired Shanks was the first to break the silence. Although he only had one arm, it did not diminish his power in the slightest. His previously appreciative gaze now held something akin to astonishment. A person capable of astonishing Red Hair, one of the 4 emperors, was enough to crush any so-called peer. Red Hair stared intently at Roxyu. Within that not-so-towering physique lay a powerful physical body, almost like a monster's. Looking again at his arms. At this moment, the skin-splitting injuries had already recovered perfectly. His skin was smooth and clean, as if everything that had just happened was an illusion. Such an incomprehensible person had suddenly emerged from the East Blue. This world truly makes one feel increasingly lost. Red Hair shook his head as he spoke. Griffin was gripped tightly once more, and red and black air currents covered the sword's body. The sharp momentum was stirring restlessly. Roxyu, this move was taught to me by that man. You are so much like him. Then let it be the one to end our battle today. As his voice fell, Shanks slightly bent one knee. Buzz, a savage aura emanated from him, rising steadily until it reached its peak. Conqueror's Haki covered the small island. Black and red intertwined, constantly moving through the space. Buzz, 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 the air currents created a shrill, swirling sound in the air, piercing people's ears and making their eardrums ache. An invisible sense of oppression swept across the entire area. Everyone immediately stopped all their movements. They even held their breath. The entire island became incredibly quiet. Only the sound of waves crashing against the reefs remained. Caw! Caw! In the high sky, a seagull flew past, breaking the suffocating tension. Roxyu adjusted his breathing, tore off his shredded clothes, and casually tossed them aside. His firm, well-defined muscles were exposed. They shone brightly under the sun's illumination. Then bring it on! He knew. This next strike was the focus of this battle, and the key to defeating Red-haired Shanks. The next moment, Red-haired Shanks moved. He raised his arm high, his long sword hovering in mid-air. At this moment, the boundless Haki in the space seemed to receive guidance. It converged toward Griffin in his hand. A streak of dazzling red fell onto the pitch-black blade. Then, Buzz red energy steamed, covering his entire body and enveloping the black air currents. His single arm was held horizontally in front of him, Griffin's blade facing outward. In the next instant, Red Hair's eyes flashed. Divine avoidance, accompanied by a low shout. He suddenly swung his arm forward. A streak of sword energy powerful enough to devour everything shot out from Griffin. Countless black and red electric arcs danced wildly within it. As the air currents surged, the ground within a 100-meter radius fractured. The air, like glass, actually showed cracks. The terrifying sword energy spanned the heavens and the earth. Just one look was enough to chill one's heart. Divine avoidance, coated with Conqueror's Haki, is a martial art inherited from Roger. It unleashes Conqueror's Haki in the form of a shockwave, capable of sweeping aside everything. That's it for today. Meet you in next part.